Story 1. My wife, sitting next to me in my hospital room, whispered to my brother, "He'll never know what we did." They thought I was in a deep coma. But I heard every single word. Let me back up, because you need to understand how normal everything was before my heart tried to kill me. Or before someone tried to make it look that way. 3 weeks earlier, I was Daniel Reeves, 38 years old, living the kind of life people describe as comfortable at dinner parties. Not wealthy, not struggling, just steady. I developed mid-tier residential properties in suburban Phoenix, the kind where young families buy their first 3-bedroom with granite countertops and a postage stamp yard. My wife Mara was a hospice nurse, one of those people who could hold a dying stranger's hand and make them feel less alone in their final moments. We'd been married 11 years. My younger brother Kyle was the family screw-up I'd been bailing out since we were teenagers. I was the responsible one. The steady one. The one who showed up. That was my whole identity, really. Daniel Reeves, reliable, boring, always there when you needed him. I should have paid more attention to who needed me, and why. Looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. Mara's mother had died about 18 months ago, cancer, quick and brutal. Mara was executor of the estate, handling all the paperwork and distributions. She'd been stressed about it, or so I thought. Spent a lot of time on the phone with lawyers and accountants. I didn't ask many questions. Grief is private, and I figured she needed space to process everything. Around the same time, her behavior started shifting. More night shifts at work. Phone always face down. When I asked about it, she said it was a patient confidentiality habit from work. Made sense. She dealt with dying patients and their families, of course she'd be protective of her phone. Kyle moved closer about 6 months ago, right after his girlfriend Simone left him. He'd been living 2 hours away, but suddenly he was 20 minutes down the road in a cheaper apartment. "Want to spend more time with family," he'd said. I helped him move, bought him groceries that first week, co-signed yet another loan, this time for $45,000 for a landscaping business he swore would finally be the one. It never occurred to me that the timing meant something. That all these pieces were connecting into a pattern I was too close to see. The morning it happened started like any other Wednesday. Mara had just finished a night shift and was still in her scrubs when I came downstairs for my run. She was at the kitchen counter, which was weird, she usually went straight to bed after work. "Made you a protein shake," she said, sliding a tall glass across the granite. "Chocolate peanut butter, my favorite. You've been looking tired lately." I must have stared at it for a second too long because she added, "What? I can't do something nice? You never make me protein shakes." I meant it as a joke, but it came out wrong. Accusatory. Her smile tightened. "Well, maybe I should do it more often." I drank it to smooth things over. The whole thing, even though it was too thick and slightly bitter at the bottom. It hit my stomach like wet concrete, but I tied my running shoes anyway. We'd been tense for months, ever since she started working more night shifts, ever since the space between us in bed got wider and colder. 4 months without physical contact beyond accidental brushes in the hallway. I wasn't about to make it worse over a protein shake. "I love you," she said as I headed for the door. I remember thinking her voice sounded distant. Performative. Like she was reading from a script. "Love you too," I said, and went out into the Phoenix heat. I made it maybe 2 miles before my heart started doing something that hearts aren't supposed to do. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed. Then everything got slow and syrupy. My heart rate wasn't racing, it was plummeting. The sidewalk tilted. I remember thinking very clearly, this is not a heart attack. This is something else. Then nothing. When I woke up, I wasn't awake. That's the only way I can describe it. My brain was on, crystal clear actually, but my body was a coffin. I could hear everything, the beep of monitors, the whoosh of the ventilator, footsteps squeaking on linoleum. I could feel the catheter, the fourth tugging at my hand, the 2 tight blood pressure cuffs cycling every 15 minutes. But I couldn't move. Couldn't open my eyes. Couldn't squeeze a finger or flutter an eyelid. I didn't know what was happening to me. All I knew was that I was trapped inside myself, screaming into a void. The doctors kept talking over me like I was furniture. "Critical bradycardia secondary to severe cardiac depression," one of them said. "Dr. Patel, I'd learn later. Heart rate dropped to the low 30s. We've got him sedated and mechanically ventilated to reduce cardiac workload while we investigate the cause. Running full toxicology now." Mara's voice, thick with tears, "But he'll wake up, right? He'll be okay?" We're cautiously optimistic. His vitals are stabilizing on support. "But Mrs. Reeves, I need you to prepare yourself. Depending on how long his brain was oxygen deprived during the initial event, there could be cognitive impairment. We won't know the extent until he regains consciousness." I wanted to scream, "I'm right here. I'm conscious right now." But my body was a stone. A tomb. The first 2 days were torture. Not the physical kind, though the ventilator tube in my throat was its own special hell, but the psychological kind. I kept waiting for my fingers to move, for my eyes to open, for something to prove I was still in control. Nothing happened. Just the same sounds on repeat, monitors beeping, nurses adjusting things, Mara crying. She was there constantly those first 48 hours. Holding my hand. Whispering about how we'd get through this together. How she'd take care of me no matter what. I believed her. Even trapped in my useless body, I believed her. Then came day 3. It was late, after midnight, judging by how quiet the unit was. I'd been drifting in that weird non-sleep state, my mind simultaneously exhausted and hyper-aware, when I heard 2 sets of footsteps enter my room. Close the door. Mara's voice, but different. Flat. No tears. The door clicked shut. The second set of footsteps came closer. Oh my, Danny. Kyle's voice. My brother. He looks dead already. He's not dead. Mara's footsteps moved to the other side of my bed. His heart still functioning. Barely. So what did the doctor say exactly? That even if he wakes up, there could be brain damage. Cognitive issues. He might not be him anymore. Silence. Then Kyle, is he in pain? I don't know. I don't think so. They've got him heavily sedated. The drugs are keeping him under. You're sure he can't hear us? My internal scream could have shattered glass. Look at him, Mara said. He's gone, Kyle. They're keeping his body alive, but Danny's not in there anymore. So we wait? We wait. And we don't mess this up like last time. Last time? Last time? The beta blocker thing was risky, Kyle said. What if they find it in his system? They won't look for it unless they have a reason. And they don't. His medical history is clean, no blood pressure issues, no prescriptions. They're focused on cardiac event of unknown origin. The tox screen is standard, but they'll be looking for recreational drugs, not prescription medications he had no reason to be taking. My mind was racing, crashing through memories like a burglar through filing cabinets. Beta blockers. I didn't take beta blockers. I didn't take any medications except the occasional ibuprofen. But beta blockers could slow your heart rate. Lower your blood pressure. In high enough doses, they could stop your heart completely. What about the life insurance? Kyle's voice cracked slightly. When does that pay out? After he's declared dead. Could be weeks if they keep him on support. But Kyle, listen to me, you need to be patient. If you do anything stupid, if you push this, we're both finished. I know. It's just. That psychopath gave me until the end of the month. If I don't have the money, you'll have it. We both will. $850,000. That's more than enough to cover your debt and for us to start over. Separately, Kyle said. We agreed. Separately. Of course separately. You think I'm stupid? A long pause. Then Mara's voice dropped even lower, barely audible. Did you get rid of the bottle? Yeah. Threw it in a dumpster behind a restaurant in Tempe. No cameras. And your guy, he can't connect you to the prescription pad? No way. He's got too much to lose. And I paid him cash. They stood there for another minute, saying nothing. I felt Mara's hand on my arm, her thumb tracing small circles on my skin. A gesture that used to comfort me. Now it made me want to vomit. I'm sorry, Danny, she whispered. I really am. But you were never going to be enough. The door opened. Footsteps receded. The door clicked shut again. I lay there in the darkness of my own skull, replaying everything. The protein shake. Too thick. Bitter at the bottom. Beta blockers. $850,000. Last time. They'd tried to kill me before. Memory is a funny thing when you're trapped inside your head with nothing to do but think. Details I'd dismissed at the time came flooding back with brutal clarity. 3 months ago, I'd gotten violently ill after dinner. Vomiting, diarrhea, confusion, the whole nightmare. We'd had takeout, sushi from that place Mara liked near the hospital. I blamed the food. She blamed the food. We both agreed I must have gotten a bad piece of fish, but the symptoms. I'd look them up later, paranoid about food poisoning. They matched ethylene glycol poisoning. Antifreeze. At the time, I'd laughed at myself for being overdramatic. Food poisoning could mimic all kinds of things. Now, lying here unable to move, I wasn't laughing. I thought about the life insurance policy we'd updated 6 months ago. We'd bought a rental property, a duplex in Scottsdale, and our financial advisor suggested increasing the coverage. Made sense. Mara handled all the paperwork because I was drowning in permit applications for a new development. $850,000. Enough to cover Kyle's gambling debts, or whatever that psychopath comment was about, and leave plenty for Mara to disappear into a new life somewhere. I thought about Kyle asking me 2 weeks ago, over beers at his apartment, do you ever feel like you're just in the way of your own life? I'd laughed. Told him he needed to lay off the existential philosophy podcasts. He'd smiled, but it hadn't reached his eyes. I thought about Mara's phone. Always face down lately. Patient confidentiality habit, she'd said when I asked. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She worked in healthcare. Of course she was protective of her phone. And I thought about Kyle moving closer 6 months ago, right after his girlfriend left him. 20 minutes away instead of 2 hours. Want to spend more time with family, he'd said. All the pieces were there. I just hadn't been looking at the puzzle. The next few days were an education in human cruelty and performance. Mara visited every day, usually in the afternoon. She'd sweep in with coffee for the nurses, compliment them on their care, and then settle into the chair by my bed. Sometimes she'd read to me, articles from news websites, updates about the rental property, neighborhood gossip. Her voice would crack at appropriate moments. She'd dab at her eyes with tissue. The nurses loved her. Your wife's amazing, one of them told me while checking my vitals. So devoted. She even asked if she could help with your care, but obviously we can't allow that since she's not on staff here. I bet she asked. Kyle visited less frequently, usually when Mara was there. They were careful not to be alone together for long, but I caught fragments of whispered conversations. Did the lawyer call you back? Not yet. Stop asking. We need to know about the probate timeline. There is no probate until there's a death certificate. Be patient. On day 6, a different doctor came by. Younger, nervous energy. Mrs. Reeves, I wanted to discuss your husband's toxicology report. My entire consciousness focused on that sentence. Of course, Mara said. Is something wrong? Well, it's unusual. We found elevated levels of beta blockers in his system. Specifically, propranolol. Very high levels, enough to cause profound cardiac depression. But according to his medical records, he's never been prescribed any cardiac medications. Silence. I could feel Mara thinking, recalibrating. That's impossible, she finally said. Could it be a lab error? We ran it twice. The levels are significant, this is what caused his cardiac event. Mrs. Reeves, did your husband have access to anyone else's medications? Could he have accidentally taken something? No. I mean, I don't keep my work medications at home, and Daniel's never been careless about that kind of thing. Her voice took on an edge of panic, calculated, I realized. Just enough distress to seem natural. Doctor, what are you saying? Are you suggesting Daniel did this to himself? No. I'm just trying to understand how a healthy man with no history of heart problems suddenly has toxic levels of propranolol in his system. This was pharmaceutical grade. Someone would have had to deliberately dose him, or he would have had to take it himself. And given his profile, I'm not seeing any psychiatric indicators that would suggest, my husband is not suicidal. Mara's voice went cold. And I'd appreciate it if you'd stop implying that he is. The doctor backpedaled. Apologized. Said they'd continue investigating but wanted to make her aware. After he left, Mara sat perfectly still for 5 minutes. Then she pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway. I couldn't hear the conversation, but when she came back, her face was composed. Mask back in place. She sat by my bed and took my hand. Danny, she whispered. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to figure it out. I promise. The lie was so smooth I almost believed it myself. Day 9 brought Dr. Patel back into my life. I'd like to try some additional consciousness assessments, he told Mara. Your husband's EEG patterns are showing more activity than we'd typically see in someone this heavily sedated. We're starting to wean his sedation to see if he can breathe on his own, and I want to check for awareness as we do that. Everything in me screamed, yes. Test me. Prove I'm here. But then Mara said, very carefully, if he's aware but can't communicate, isn't that worse? For him? It would be challenging, certainly. But it would also change our treatment approach. What kind of tests? Dr. Patel explained, track my eyes if I could, squeeze his hand, respond to commands. Basic stuff. Stuff I'd been trying to do for days with zero success. Whatever drugs they had me on kept me paralyzed even as my mind stayed sharp and aware. When? Mara asked. This afternoon, if you'd like to be present. I would. Thank you. After Dr. Patel left, Mara stayed quiet for a long time. Then she made another phone call from the hallway. I couldn't make out words, but her tone was urgent. Frightened, even. That afternoon, Kyle showed up 30 minutes before Dr. Patel's scheduled test. You shouldn't be here, Mara hissed. I needed to see him. If he responds to the test, then we have bigger problems than me being in his room. They stood on opposite sides of my bed. Mara's hand rested on my shoulder. Kyle's arms were crossed, his body language screaming discomfort. What if he's been listening this whole time? Kyle's voice was barely a whisper. Then we're already finished. But he's not. Look at him, Kyle. There's nothing there. I'd never hated anyone more than I hated them in that moment. When Dr. Patel arrived with a nurse, he asked Kyle and Mara to step back. He leaned over me, shining a penlight in my eyes. Daniel, if you can hear me, I want you to try moving your eyes toward the light. Can you do that for me? I tried. I swear I tried. Every ounce of will I had went into moving my eyeballs even a fraction of an inch. Nothing. The drugs held me prisoner. Daniel, squeeze my hand if you can hear me. His hand wrapped around mine. I focused on my fingers, imagined them closing, screamed at my nervous system to just work. Nothing. Dr. Patel tried several more tests. Each one failed. I'm sorry, he said to Mara. The sedation is still too heavy. We'll continue weaning and try again in a few days. But there's no evidence of voluntary response at this time. Mara's relief was palpable. So he's not suffering? The sedation should be keeping him comfortable. After they left, Mara and Kyle stayed in my room for another 20 minutes. Neither spoke. But as they left together, I heard Mara say, "We're almost there. Just hold on a little longer." That night, something changed. As the sedation slowly decreased, I started to feel my body differently. Not movement yet, but potential. Like circuits reconnecting after being cut. Around 2 a.m., when the unit was quiet and the overnight nurse had just checked on me, I felt something. A spark. Like an electrical wire that had been severed suddenly finding its partner again. My right index finger moved. It wasn't much, maybe a millimeter, but it moved. I felt the muscle contract. Felt the skin shift against the sheets. I wanted to cry. Instead, I immediately stopped and went perfectly still. If I could move, I needed to be smart about it. If Mara and Kyle knew I was recovering, they'd have to act fast. And acting fast meant something violent. Something that couldn't be blamed on natural causes. So I hid it. For the next few days, I practiced in secret. Finger twitches became hand movements. Eyelid flutters. The ability to swallow voluntarily. My tongue responding to commands. And I listened. Kyle visited on day 11, alone this time. He pulled a chair close and leaned forward. "Danny," he said. "I know you can't hear me, but I need to say this anyway. You were always the good one. The one who had his life together. And I just kept failing. Over and over. You bailed me out so many times, and I kept digging deeper holes." He paused. "The guy I owe money to? He's not a loan shark." That was simplifying it. He's worse. And I owe him $90,000, not 45. The landscaping business was never real. I was gambling. Sports betting, mostly. I thought I could win it back. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry. But when Mara came to me 6 months ago with her problem, and I told her about mine, and we realized you were the solution to both our problems. The life insurance would save me. Would give her a fresh start before the audit caught her." "Audit? What audit?" "She promised me $100,000 from the insurance. Enough to pay off the debt and start over somewhere else. Somewhere he can't find me. And she'd take the rest and disappear with." He stopped himself. "It doesn't matter. Point is, we thought we had a plan." Kyle stood up. "I hope you're not in there. I really do. Because if you are, if you can hear me, you must hate me. And you'd be right too." He left without touching me. On day 13, I overheard something that changed everything. Mara was in my room alone, on the phone. She thought I was unconscious, or at least unable to understand. She was wrong. "I don't care what he says, Simone. The timelines moved up. That stupid doctor is getting suspicious about the beta blockers, and the estate audit is in 4 weeks now." Simone. Kyle's ex-girlfriend. Why was Mara talking to Simone? "No, Kyle doesn't know about us. He thinks this is just about his debt and my mother's estate. And we're keeping it that way." Estate. Mara's mother's estate. "Baby, listen to me. Once Daniel's gone and the insurance pays out, I'm giving Kyle enough to disappear. Then you and I are taking the rest and going to Costa Rica like we planned. 6 months from now, we'll be on a beach, and none of this will matter." My entire understanding of the conspiracy rewrote itself in that moment. Mara wasn't having an affair with Kyle. She was having an affair with Kyle's ex. And they were using Kyle's desperation as cover. But there was more. "The audit's happening whether I like it or not," Mara continued. "They're going to find the withdrawals. I was careful, but not that careful. 215,000 over 18 months. If Daniel's alive when that happens, he'll divorce me. I'll lose everything. We'll lose everything." So it wasn't just about Kyle's debt. Mara had embezzled over $200,000 from her dead mother's estate. An audit was coming. She needed me dead before the truth came out, Before I could divorce her and she'd walk away with nothing. I was a loose end. A liability. An obstacle standing between her and freedom with her girlfriend. The betrayal was almost academic at this point. What was one more layer? After Mara left, I started strategizing. I could move my right hand reliably now, though my movements were clumsy from weeks of immobility. My eyes could track movement if I concentrated. I could swallow. But my vocal cords were still weak. They'd removed the ventilator tube 2 days ago when my breathing stabilized enough. Now I had a nasal cannula for supplemental oxygen. My voice, when I'd tried to use it during a moment alone, came out as a rasp so faint even I could barely hear it. If I revealed too much too soon, they'd find a way to finish me. But if I waited too long, I might miss my window. I had to time it perfectly. The catalyst came on day 18. An incident occurred in the hospital. A family member had assaulted a nurse in the emergency department. The assault was serious enough that the hospital launched a comprehensive security review of all visitor access protocols across every unit. In the process of reviewing footage hospital-wide, security noticed something odd: Kyle and Mara entering my ICU room together after hours. Multiple times. Always during nursing shift changes when staff coverage was minimal. Dr. Patel was notified. So was the hospital ethics officer. I knew because a nurse mentioned it while changing my "Your wife's being asked to come in for a meeting tomorrow. Just routine stuff about visitor logs. Nothing to worry about." Mara must have gotten the call because she showed up that evening, her face pale and tight. Kyle arrived 30 minutes later. "They know we've been coming in after hours," Mara said once the door was closed. "So what? We're family. We wanted to see him. Together, Kyle. Always together. And always during shift changes when there's minimal staff coverage. They're going to ask why. We tell them we wanted privacy. To talk to him without medical staff hovering. That works once. Maybe twice. But they pulled weeks of footage. This looks deliberate. Coordinated. What do you want me to do? I want you to stay away for a few days. Let me handle the meeting. I'll say you were supporting me through the grief, that we didn't realize we were breaking any protocols. And if they ask about, they won't. They're not looking for a conspiracy. They're dotting I's and crossing T's for their incident report. Unless you give them a reason to dig deeper." Kyle ran his hands through his hair. "This is falling apart, Mara." "It's not falling apart. You're panicking. The guy he's not waiting anymore. He sent someone to my apartment. They broke my bathroom mirror and left a note that said next time it's your face. So we accelerate." The room went silent. "What does that mean?" Kyle's voice was barely audible. "It means we don't wait for nature to take its course. Daniel's stable. Too stable. His heart's recovering. The sedation's almost gone. If we wait much longer, he's going to wake up fully, and then we're both going to prison. You said we couldn't do anything violent. You said it had to look natural. That was before the ethics meeting. Once they start asking questions, we have maybe a 24-hour window. After that, there'll be too much scrutiny." "Mara, I can't." "You can't?" Her voice went hard. "You can't? You came to me 6 months ago begging for help. You told me your life was over unless I did something. And I said fine, but you have to help me too. And you agreed. You helped me with the first attempt. You got the antifreeze. You distracted him while I spiked his drink. And when that didn't work, you found someone to get the prescription pad. You crushed the pills. You were all in, Kyle. So don't tell me now you can't. I didn't think it would be this complicated. Murder is complicated, Kyle. That's why most people don't do it." Murder. The word hung in the air like smoke. "What's the plan?" Kyle asked. Mara walked to the window. When she spoke again, her voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "Potassium chloride. I used to work at this hospital before I went into hospice care, did patient transfers here for 2 years. My badge still has access to some of the supply areas because they never deactivated it when I left. High dose, injected directly into his foreline. It'll cause cardiac arrest within 2 minutes. Mostly untraceable if done right, especially in someone who already had a cardiac event. And if they test for it? Potassium is naturally in the body. Elevated levels post-mortem can be explained by cell death. By the time anyone thinks to question it, we'll be gone. Oh my goodness. Tomorrow night. 2 a.m. The overnight nurse takes her break then, she's like clockwork. We have maybe a 10-minute window. I don't know if I can do this. Then the man you owe money to will kill you. Slowly. And you'll deserve it for being a coward. They left separately, 5 minutes apart. I lay there, my heart hammering against my ribs, as much as it could hammer with residual cardiac damage. 24 hours. I had 24 hours to either expose them or die. I spent the rest of day 18 practicing. Moving my arm. Flexing my fingers. Trying to vocalize. The call button was clipped to the rail about 8 inches from my right hand. If I could just grab it, just press it, the nurses would come. But I'd need to be quick. If Mara and Kyle walked in and saw me moving deliberately, they'd improvise. And improvisation meant a pillow over my face or something equally brutal. By midnight, I could lift my hand about 3 inches off the bed and move it laterally. Not graceful, but maybe enough. The night nurse came by at 1:30 a.m. for vitals. "You're doing great, Mr. Reeves. Heart rate's much better. Keep fighting." If only she knew. At 1:50 a.m., the night nurse left for her break. Like clockwork, just like Mara said. At 1:55 a.m., footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. Mara and Kyle. Mara had a syringe in her hand. Clear liquid. Potassium chloride. "Close the door," she whispered. Kyle did. His hands were shaking. They approached my bed from opposite sides. Mara's face was eerily calm. This was her element: medical procedures, clinical decisions. She detached. I was no longer her husband. I was a problem to be solved. "Once I inject this, we have maybe 90 seconds before his heart stops and the monitors alert the nurses," she said. "We act shocked, devastated. We tell them we just got here, found him coding. Understand?" Kyle nodded. Mara reached for my 4-line. Every ounce of will, every hour of practice, every scrap of rage and survival instinct I had left converged into a single moment. My right hand shot out and grabbed the bed rail call button. The motion was clumsy, desperate, but my fingers closed around the button and squeezed. Alarms erupted. Not the gentle call chime, but the full emergency alert because I'd hit the code blue button by mistake. Mara froze, the syringe inches from my foreport. Kyle jumped back like I'd caught fire. "He's awake," Kyle breathed. "Oh my gosh, he's awake." I tried to speak. My vocal cords produced a sound like sandpaper on metal. "Help. Me." Footsteps thundered down the hall. The door burst open. 2 nurses and a resident. "What's happening?" one of the nurses demanded. Mara's hand spasmed. The syringe fell. It hit the floor and shattered, clear liquid spreading across the linoleum. Mara started. "They poisoned me." Each word felt like swallowing glass, but I forced them out. My voice was barely a whisper, but in the shocked silence of the room, everyone heard. "Check. The shake. Beta blockers. Check. Her mother's estate." The resident looked between me and Mara and Kyle. His face went pale. "Someone call security. And get Dr. Patel. Now." Kyle bolted. Made it maybe 10 steps down the hallway before a security guard tackled him. Mara tried a different approach. "He's confused. The sedation, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's been in a medically induced coma for weeks. Ma'am, step away from the patient." "I'm his wife." "Step away from the patient now." They pulled her back. More staff flooded in. Someone photographed the broken syringe on the floor, being careful not to step in the liquid. Dr. Patel arrived in pajamas and a jacket, looking more awake than anyone had a right to be at 2 a.m. He leaned over me. "Daniel? Can you hear me?" "Yes." My voice was ragged but clear. "Do you know where you are?" "Hospital. They tried to kill me. Beta blockers. In protein shake. Mara. Stole from estate. 200,000. Kyle. Gambling debt. Check phone. Simone." Dr. Patel's face went from concern to horrified. "Get Phoenix PD here immediately. Nobody leaves this floor. And somebody bagged that syringe as evidence." The unraveling happened fast. Police arrived within 20 minutes. Kyle cracked within an hour of questioning. Spilled everything: the gambling debt, the loan shark, Mara approaching him 6 months ago about her problem, the first poisoning attempt with antifreeze, the protein shake with crushed beta blockers he'd obtained through Simone's connection. He tried to paint himself as a reluctant participant, coerced by Mara and desperate circumstances. Mara stayed silent and asked for a lawyer. But text messages don't lie. When they seized her phone, they found months of exchanges with Simone. Planning. Fantasizing about life after I was gone. Screenshots of real estate listings in Costa Rica. And one message that sealed everything: "Once Danny's gone, we're free." Simone was arrested as an accessory. Turned out she'd been the one who connected Kyle to someone who'd worked at a medical clinic that had been robbed 6 months earlier. Prescription pads stolen, never reported because it would have meant admitting the clinic's security was compromised. Simone's cousin had worked there, had been the inside person on the theft. The whole thing unraveled like pulling a thread. The estate audit moved up once police got involved. Mara had taken over $215,000 across a series of withdrawals and transfers disguised as estate expenses. Funeral costs, property maintenance, legal fees, all fabricated. She'd been gambling that by the time the audit caught the discrepancies, I'd be dead and she'd be gone. The life insurance company voided the policy. Attempted fraud. I survived, but barely. The beta blocker poisoning had caused permanent heart damage. The cardiologist explained that the prolonged period of severe bradycardia had starved my heart muscle of oxygen. I'd need a pacemaker for the rest of my life. My cardiologist told me I'd never run again. Probably shouldn't even climb stairs without resting. My parents flew in from Florida. My dad couldn't look at me for 3 days. Not because of me, but because his 2 sons had become a murder plot. He'd raised one son who was willing to kill and another who'd tried to stop him. The math didn't work. Families aren't supposed to produce that equation. My mom just cried. Kyle got 12 years. Pled out to avoid trial. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, attempted murder. Mara got 18. Took it to trial and lost spectacularly. The prosecution played the text messages to Simone. Played the recording of her telling Kyle murder is complicated. Showed the jury the broken syringe, the potassium chloride, the stolen estate funds. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Simone got 7 as an accessory. I testified at all 3 trials. Spent hours on the stand recounting every whispered conversation, every horrible realization, every moment of being trapped in my own body while the 2 people I trusted most plotted my death. The defense attorneys tried to discredit me. Said my memories were unreliable, that patients emerging from heavy sedation often confabulate or misremember. But the physical evidence backed me up. The beta blocker levels in my initial blood work. The broken syringe that tested positive for potassium chloride. The stolen prescription pad traced back to Simone's cousin. The embezzled estate funds. The text messages spelling out their plan. It was airtight. And it meant nothing. 3 months after the trials ended, I got a letter. The prison system forwards mail, and Kyle had found a way to reach me. 1 line, handwritten, she was going to kill me next. I saved you. I read it 17 times. Trying to decode it. Trying to figure out if it was true, or if this was one last manipulation. Because here's the thing, Kyle might have been right. Mara was ruthless. And Kyle was always going to be a loose end. Once I was dead and the insurance money paid out, what stopped her from pinning everything on him? What stopped her from accidentally revealing his location to the loan shark? Maybe Kyle had a moment of conscience. Maybe he realized he was signing his own death warrant. Maybe he dropped the syringe on purpose, made enough noise to wake me up, forced my hand to move. Or maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe he was just a coward who got caught. I'll never know. I burned the letter. My new apartment is smaller than the house Mara and I shared. A lot smaller. Legal fees consumed most of my savings. I had to sell the rental property at a loss. The development company let me go, restructuring, they said, but we both knew the real reason. Nobody wants to work with the guy whose wife tried to murder him. It makes people uncomfortable. I can't drink protein shakes anymore. Can't stand the texture. Coffee, black, and nothing else in the morning. I check my phone compulsively. Every unknown number sends my heart rate spiking, which isn't great given the pacemaker. I've blocked so many reporters, true crime podcasters, and random strangers wanting to just talk about my experience that my blocked list has over 300 entries. I see my parents once a month. We meet at a diner halfway between their place and mine. We don't talk about Kyle. His name exists in a void at the center of our conversations, this black hole we all navigate around. My mom will mention when you boys were young and then catch herself, and the silence that follows is worse than anything she could have said. My dad asked me once, about 6 weeks after Kyle's sentencing, if I ever felt guilty. For what? I asked. He couldn't articulate it, but I knew what he meant. Did I feel guilty for surviving? For being the reason his other son was in prison? I told him no. I didn't feel guilty. I felt robbed. That was the last time we discussed it. Dating is impossible. I tried once, about 4 months ago. Met someone through a friend of a friend. We went to dinner. Nice place, good conversation. She asked what I did for work, and I gave the sanitized version, real estate, though I was between projects at the moment. Then she asked if I'd been married before. I should have lied. Should have said no, or divorced, or literally anything else. But I'd spent so many months buried in truth during depositions and testimony that I'd lost the ability to construct comfortable fictions. Yes, I said. My wife tried to kill me with my brother. They're both in prison. She laughed. Thought I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, her face did this thing where all the warmth drained out of it. We finished dinner in mostly silence. She texted the next day saying she didn't think we were compatible. I didn't blame her. Who wants to date a man whose own family wanted him dead? The worst part isn't the loneliness, though. It's the doubt. I lie awake some nights replaying our marriage. 11 years. Were any of them real? Was Mara ever actually in love with me, or was I always just a placeholder until someone better came along? When did I become insufficient? When did I love you turn from truth to performance? I remember our wedding. She cried during the vows. I thought they were happy tears. Maybe they were. Maybe she meant it then. Maybe I watched a person I loved slowly transform into a stranger who could hold a syringe full of poison over my foreline without hesitation. Or maybe she was always that person, and I was just too stupid to see it. I looked at our wedding photos once, about a month ago. Searched through the boxes I'd stuffed in my closet, found the album. There we were, 27 and 25, grinning like idiots. My arm around her waist. Her hand on my chest. Kyle in the background of one shot, raising a champagne glass. I couldn't find a single hint of what was coming. No darkness in Mara's eyes. No shadow across Kyle's face. Just two young people starting a life and a younger brother celebrating with them. I put the album in the dumpster behind my building. Couldn't stand having it in the apartment anymore. The hospital sent me a bill for my stay. 23 days in ICU and step-down units, multiple specialists, around-the-clock care. Even with insurance, my portion came to $78,000. I called the billing department and explained the situation. I was poisoned, I said. My wife, who was a healthcare worker, deliberately induced the cardiac event that put me in your hospital. She's now in prison for attempting to murder me. I don't feel I should be financially responsible for the costs associated with my own attempted murder. There was a long pause. Then, sir, I understand your situation is unique, but the services were rendered, and insurance has determined your liability. So I'm supposed to pay for being almost killed? I'm very sorry, sir. I don't make the rules. I'm on a payment plan. $350 a month for the next 18.5 years. By the time it's paid off, I'll be 56. The cruelty of it is almost funny. Almost. I found Simone's Instagram about 8 weeks ago. I know I shouldn't have looked. But there's this compulsion to understand, to see if any of them show remorse or growth or anything resembling human complexity. Her profile was public. She'd posted a photo from prison, one of those sanitized shots where you can barely tell she's incarcerated except for the cinder block walls. She's smiling. The caption read, healing. Growing. Becoming. Becoming what? I wanted to comment. Becoming someone who doesn't help murder innocent people? Becoming someone who takes accountability? Becoming anything other than a narcissist who ruined lives and now posts inspirational garbage from a cell? I blocked her instead. Mara has never written to me. Not once. No apology, no explanation, nothing. And honestly, I'm grateful. What could she possibly say? Sorry I tried to murder you, but you weren't ambitious enough for me? My bad about the whole potassium chloride thing, but I really loved Simone and you were cramping our style? There are no words that would make sense of it. Kyle's letter, though. That letter keeps gnawing at me. She was going to kill me next. I saved you. I've constructed a dozen scenarios where it might be true. Mara and Simone, free and clear with the insurance money, deciding Kyle knows too much. Deciding he's unstable, a liability. Maybe they'd stage another accident. Maybe they'd frame him for my murder and let him rot while they disappeared to Costa Rica. In this version, Kyle's not a hero. He's just a rat fleeing a sinking ship. But he did panic. He did fumble the syringe. He did make enough noise to jolt me into action. Or maybe that's what he wants me to think. Maybe this is his final manipulation, planting doubt, making sure I never get closure, ensuring that even from prison he still has power over my thoughts. I'll never know which version is true. And that might be the cruelest part of all. Dr. Patel wanted me to see a therapist. What you experienced, he said during a follow-up appointment, isn't something people just get over. PTSD is almost inevitable given the circumstances. I went twice. The therapist was nice enough. Asked me to describe the experience. I told her about being conscious but paralyzed from the sedation and residual drug effects, about hearing Mara and Kyle discuss my death like it was a grocery list, about the moment I grabbed the call button. How did that feel? She asked. When you finally moved. Like being born, I said. Or resurrected. I don't know. Like proving I still existed. She nodded. Took notes. Asked if I had nightmares. I lied and said no. The truth is I have the same nightmare 3 or 4 times a week. I'm back in the hospital bed. Mara's standing over me with a syringe. I try to move my hand, but this time nothing happens. My body's a stone again. The drugs have me paralyzed. She injects the potassium chloride into my fore, and I feel my heart start to seize. And I wake up gasping, my pacemaker sending confused signals, my sheets soaked with sweat. I didn't go back for a 3rd session. What's the point? Talking about it doesn't change what happened. Doesn't undo the betrayal. Doesn't give me back the ability to trust people. I'm better off alone. There are good days, sometimes. Days where I don't think about it for hours at a stretch. Where I'm just Daniel, guy with a pacemaker and a small apartment and a job doing property appraisals for a firm that doesn't care about my history. I went to a movie last week. Some action thing with explosions and car chases. Mindless. Halfway through, there was a scene where the villain poisoned the hero's drink. The hero drank it, collapsed, nearly died but was saved at the last second. I had to leave the theater. Stood in the lobby trying to breathe while a teenager behind the concession counter asked if I was okay. Fine, I said. Just needed air. Most days aren't that bad, though. Most days I function. I pay my bills, go to work, buy groceries, pretend everything is normal. But normal is a lie I tell myself to get through the day. The thing nobody tells you about betrayal this profound is that it rewires your brain. I can't watch hospital dramas anymore. Can't listen to beeping monitors. Can't smell antiseptic without my heart rate spiking. I sleep with all the lights on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because I'm afraid of being unconscious. Of losing control. Of not knowing what's happening around me. I've been on 4 dates since the disastrous one where I told the truth. For the other 3, I constructed a safer story: divorced, amicable split, no kids. Nobody asked follow-up questions. 2 of the dates led to second dates. 1 led to sleeping together. I couldn't do it. Couldn't trust it. Couldn't stop my brain from calculating, what does she want? What's the angle? How long until she's standing over me with something deadly? She was confused. Hurt, probably. I apologized and left. Haven't tried since. My second therapist, a different one I forced myself to see for 6 sessions before quitting again, said I was experiencing hypervigilance and attachment trauma. She said it was normal given the circumstances. That with time and work, I might be able to trust again. I didn't believe her. Still don't. I ran into an old friend 3 weeks ago. College buddy I hadn't seen in years. He was in Phoenix for a conference, looked me up. We got coffee. He knew about the case. It had made national news for about 2 weeks, one of those sensational stories that cable news cycles through before moving on. But he didn't know I was that Daniel Reeves until I told him. Oh my goodness, man, he said. I remember reading about that. I can't imagine. Nobody can, I said. That's kind of the point. We talked about other things. His kids, his job, normal life stuff. He asked if I was seeing anyone. Not really my priority right now, I said. He nodded. Makes sense. You've been through a lot. But then he said something that stuck with me. You know what the weirdest part of that story was? At least from the outside? It's that they almost got away with it. If you hadn't woken up right then, if you hadn't been able to move, nobody would have questioned it. Cardiac patient dies of cardiac arrest. Case closed. He's right. If my recovery had been delayed by even 12 hours. If the hospital hadn't launched that security review for the unrelated assault. If 100 tiny variables had shifted slightly, I'd be dead. Cremated, probably, like Mara hoped. And she and Simone would be drinking cocktails on a beach somewhere while Kyle paid off his debt and started over. The randomness of my survival is almost scarier than the murder attempt itself. I drove past our old house last month. I don't know why. Some kind of masochistic impulse. New family living there now. Kids' toys in the yard. Basketball hoop over the garage. I sat in my car across the street for maybe 10 minutes, trying to remember what it felt like to belong to that house. To have a life there. To be married. To have a brother I talked to. I couldn't access the feeling. It was like trying to remember someone else's memories. The front door opened and a man came out, mid-30s, dad bod, carrying trash to the curb. He saw me sitting there and waved. Friendly. Assuming I was lost or looking for an address. I drove away before he could approach. Kyle's parole hearing is in 8 years. Mara's is in 13. Simone's is in 3. I got notices about all of them. Victims' rights. I'm entitled to submit a statement, to attend, to argue against their release. I don't know if I will. Part of me wants to stand in front of the parole board and detail every moment of terror, every night I can't sleep, every relationship I'll never have because of what they did. Part of me wants them to rot forever. But another part of me is just tired. Tired of being the guy whose wife tried to kill him. Tired of carrying this story around like a weight. Tired of letting them occupy space in my head. Maybe the healthiest thing I can do is nothing. Let the system run its course. Let them serve their time or get out early or whatever happens. Let go of the need for revenge or justice or closure or whatever you want to call it. I haven't decided yet. I have 8 years to figure it out. My apartment has a balcony. 4th floor, overlooks the parking lot. Nothing scenic, but sometimes I sit out there in the evening and watch people come and go. Families unloading groceries. Couples holding hands. Normal life happening all around me. I wonder sometimes what they'd think if they knew. If they knew the guy in 4C survived a murder plot, that his wife and brother conspired to kill him, that he spent 3 weeks trapped in his own body listening to them plan his death. Would they avoid me? Feel sorry for me? Be fascinated in that grotesque way people are fascinated by tragedy when it happens to someone else? Probably all three. I don't tell anyone anymore. New coworkers, casual acquaintances, the guy who works at the coffee shop I go to, they know me as Daniel, quiet guy with a heart condition. That's it. The rest of the story stays buried. It's easier that way. Less explaining. Less pity. Less of that look people get when they're trying to figure out what to say to someone whose life imploded. The smell of coffee is different now. Used to be comforting. Now it's just coffee. I drink it because I need caffeine, not because I enjoy it. Same with food. I eat to function. Nothing tastes like it used to. My cardiologist says that's not a heart thing. That's a depression thing. I'm probably depressed. But so what? What person in my situation wouldn't be? And what's the point of treating it? Antidepressants aren't going to unbetray me. Therapy isn't going to give me back the years I lost. Nothing changes the fact that the two people I trusted most in the world tried to murder me for money. You don't recover from that. You just learn to live with it. I got a notification last week that Mara's trying to appeal her sentence. Something about ineffective counsel. Her lawyer apparently didn't object to certain evidence or cross-examine witnesses properly. The prosecutor called to let me know. Asked if I wanted to submit anything to the appeals court. Will it matter? I asked. Honestly? Probably not. The evidence was overwhelming. Even with a better defense attorney, she'd have been convicted. Then no, I said. I don't want to submit anything. What would I say? Please keep my ex-wife in prison because I'm still having nightmares? Because I can't trust anyone? Because every day I wake up and remember that she held a syringe full of poison over my foreline without hesitation? The justice system already handled it. She got 18 years. Whether it's enough is irrelevant. Nothing would be enough. Sometimes I think about what Dr. Patel said, right after everything came out. He pulled me aside before I was discharged and said, "You survived something that should have killed you. Twice. That means something." I wanted to ask what it meant. What cosmic significance there was to surviving my wife's murder attempts. Was I supposed to dedicate my life to something meaningful now? Start a foundation? Write a book? Turn trauma into purpose? I didn't do any of those things. I got a job, found an apartment, paid my bills. Survived in the most mundane sense of the word. Maybe that's enough. Maybe survival doesn't have to mean anything beyond continuing to exist. Maybe I'm supposed to be okay with that. It's been 9 months now since I opened my eyes in that hospital room and grabbed the call button. 9 months since my life divided into before and after. Before, married, stable, brother I'd bail out of trouble, comfortable life, normal problems. After, alone, damaged, brother in prison, comfortable life destroyed, problems nobody should have to face. I don't know how to bridge that gap. Don't know how to integrate the Daniel who ran every morning with the Daniel who has a pacemaker and can't climb stairs without resting. Don't know how to reconcile the man who trusted his wife with the man who checks his coffee for sediment every single morning before drinking. They feel like different people. And I'm stuck being the after version, forever haunted by memories of the before version's innocence. The apartment is quiet tonight. It's always quiet. I don't play music anymore. Don't watch TV. The silence is safer. In silence, I can hear if something's wrong. My phone is on the coffee table, face up. Always face up now. I check it every few minutes. No missed calls. No threatening texts. No unknown numbers. Just the usual email spam and app notifications. I should go to bed. It's past midnight. But sleep means vulnerability. Sleep means those moments when my body won't move, when I'm back in that hospital bed, when the nightmare starts again. Sometimes I think about Kyle's letter. She was going to kill me next. I saved you. If that's true, if he really did have a moment of conscience or self-preservation or whatever you want to call it, does that change anything? Does it make him less guilty? Does it earn him forgiveness? I don't think so. But I'm not sure. And the uncertainty is its own kind of prison. The last time I felt truly safe was probably that morning before my run. Standing in my kitchen, annoyed that Mara had made me a protein shake I didn't want, tying my running shoes, thinking my biggest problem was marital tension and Kyle's failed business. I'd give anything to have those problems back. I'd give anything to be the kind of naive that lets you drink something your spouse made without calculating whether it might kill you. I'd give anything to call my brother and have him actually be my brother, not a conspirator or a warning or a cautionary tale. But that version of me is dead. Mara and Kyle killed him just as surely as if the potassium chloride had reached my heart. I'm what's left. The after. The survivor. The guy who grabbed the call button. And I don't know what to do with that except keep going. Keep waking up. Keep checking my coffee. Keep avoiding hospitals and antiseptic and the fluorescent light hum that triggers flashbacks. Keep surviving. Even though some days I'm not sure I want to. There's a moment that happens sometimes, usually in that space between sleep and waking. My body won't move. Sleep paralysis, the doctors say. Normal. Harmless. But in those seconds, sometimes it's only 5 or 10 seconds, but it feels infinite, I'm back in that bed. Paralyzed by sedation and damaged nerves. Listening. Waiting for someone to say something that will finally make sense of it all. Waiting for Mara to whisper an explanation that justifies everything. Waiting for Kyle to admit he cared, that he struggled with it, that some part of him wanted to stop. Waiting for proof that I wasn't just an obstacle to be removed, that my life meant something beyond its financial value. No one ever does. The paralysis breaks. I can move again. I'm in my apartment, not the hospital. Mara's in prison. Kyle's in prison. I'm alive. But I'm not sure I survived. Because survival implies you made it through intact. That you came out the other side whole. That you continued being yourself, just with new scars. I'm not whole. I'm fragments. Pieces of the person I used to be, glued back together with anxiety and hypervigilance and profound distrust. The cracks are visible. The adhesive is failing. I'm alive. But the version of Daniel Reeves who went for a run that Wednesday morning, the one who trusted his wife, who loved his brother, who believed in the fundamental goodness of the people closest to him, he died in that hospital bed. What's left is something else. Someone else. A man who sleeps with the lights on. A man who checks his coffee every morning for sediment that isn't there. A man who hears the hum of fluorescent lights and feels his heart rate spike. A man who will never fully trust another human being as long as he lives. That's the real cost of betrayal this complete. Not death. Not even attempted murder. But the slow erosion of everything that made you human in the first place. The ability to love. To trust. To exist in the world without constantly calculating threat levels and escape routes. They didn't kill my body. They killed everything else. And somehow, I'm still here. Still breathing. Still paying my hospital bills in $350 monthly installments. Still showing up to work. Still pretending to be a person. Still surviving. Even though survival feels like the cruelest punishment of all. Story 2.
My parents banned me from having kids after my sister nearly died in childbirth, but they don't know I'm 8 months pregnant. That's the truth. That's what I've been carrying around for 32 weeks now, and the weight of it has nothing to do with the baby pressing against my lungs and everything to do with the lies I tell every single day. To my parents. To my sister. To the family that still wakes up some nights gasping, remembering the pool of blood on Leah's bathroom floor 3 years ago. Let me back up. My name is Maya. I'm 28. I've been married to Daniel for 4 years, together since college, married at 24, the kind of steady, unremarkable love story that makes other people sigh and say relationship goals in the comments. Daniel's a software engineer. I'm a data analyst. We live in a small 3-bedroom house 45 minutes from where I grew up, just far enough to feel independent, just close enough that my mother can guilt trip me about missing Sunday dinners. Except we don't talk about children. Ever. Other couples our age do that thing where they joke about someday or debate baby names over wine or coo at their friends' newborns with that wistful look that says soon. We don't. The second bedroom in our house is Daniel's home office. The third is a guest room we use for storage. We skip past the baby sections in Target like they're radioactive. When our friends started having kids 2 years ago, I perfected the art of smiling so wide my face hurt and changing the subject before anyone could ask when it would be our turn. Because there was never going to be a turn. Not for us. 3 years ago, 1 year into our marriage, my older sister Leah nearly bled to death giving birth to her son. Placental abruption. The placenta just separated. Catastrophically. My mother found her collapsed in the bathroom at 37 weeks, blood everywhere, so much blood that my father still can't talk about it without his voice breaking. Emergency hysterectomy. 6 days in the ICU. My nephew survived. Leah survived. Barely. I remember the hospital fluorescent lights. That's what sticks with me most, those horrible, buzzing white lights that make everyone look half dead already. The smell of hand sanitizer everywhere, that sharp antiseptic burn in your nostrils. Daniel holding my hand so tight I had bruises the next day, purple fingerprints on my wrist like he was afraid I'd disappear too. Here's the thing nobody tells you about almost losing someone: it changes your DNA. Not literally, though in our case, the DNA was already a problem. Leah and I both carry factor V Leiden, a clotting disorder that makes pregnancy Russian roulette. Our maternal grandmother died in childbirth in 1963. An aunt on my mother's side nearly died in the 80s. When the doctors sat us all down after Leah stabilized, they were very clear: any pregnancy for me would be high risk. Not impossible. Just dangerous. My mother made me promise right there in the ICU, with Leah still intubated 10 feet away, with machines breathing for my sister. I cannot bury another daughter, she said, her voice so flat it didn't even sound human anymore. I won't survive it. Promise me, Maya. Promise me right now. I promised. Daniel was there. He nodded along, solemn, agreeing this was the right choice. The only choice. For 3 years, we kept that promise. I had an IUD. We were careful. We told ourselves we were fine being the cool aunt and uncle, that parenthood wasn't for everyone, that we had enough love between just the two of them. We hosted game nights and went on vacations and adopted a cat named Soup and built a life that looked full from the outside. But something started changing about 8 months ago. I can't pinpoint the exact moment. Maybe it was my nephew's second birthday party, watching him blow out candles while Leah watched him like she was memorizing his face, like she still couldn't believe he was real. Maybe it was turning 28 and feeling my body hum with something I didn't have words for. Maybe it was just biology, clawing its way through logic and promises and fear. I scheduled an appointment to have my IUD removed. I didn't tell Daniel. I told myself I just needed to know what it felt like to not be actively preventing pregnancy. That I'd stay on backup birth control. That I was just exploring the idea, getting a feel for it, keeping my options open even though I knew I'd never actually go through with it. Then I didn't refill my backup prescription. I told myself it was just for 1 month. Just to see what happened. Just to know if I even could get pregnant, because maybe I couldn't and then the whole question would be moot and I'd never have to make an actual decision. The pregnancy was discovered at 12 weeks during a routine physical. I sat in my doctor's office, staring at the ultrasound screen, and realized I'd been in active denial for 3 months. The nausea? Work stress? The exhaustion? Bad sleep schedule? The missed periods? Side effects from having the IUD removed. The baby on the screen had fingers. A face. A heartbeat that sounded like a tiny galloping horse. I told Daniel that night. I expected anger, betrayal, accusations, demands that I fix this. Instead, he went completely silent for 2 hours. He sat on the couch staring at nothing while I paced the kitchen, waiting for him to tell me what a terrible person I was. Finally, he said, "I've wanted to be a father since the day we got married. But I would never ask you to risk your life for it." We cried together on the kitchen floor until 3 in the morning. Then we did what we always do, we researched. Obsessively. We found a high-risk OB who specialized in clotting disorders. We read medical journals until our eyes burned. We learned words like heparin protocol and planned cesarean and hemorrhage risk. The doctor was cautiously optimistic. With careful monitoring, blood thinners twice daily, weekly ultrasounds, and a planned C-section at 37 weeks, my risk could be managed. Not eliminated. Managed. The mortality rate for women with my condition in unmanaged pregnancies was around 5%. With proper care, it dropped to 2 to 3%. Still 20 times higher than normal. Still a 1 in 40 chance I'd die. But also, a 97% chance I'd live. Daniel and I made a choice together. We'd keep the baby. We'd do everything right. And we'd tell absolutely no one. Especially not my parents. For 5 months, we've been living a double life. Weekly medical appointments I lie about, dentist, eye doctor, work thing. Daniel working from home more to save on gas but really to help me when the morning sickness gets so bad I can't stand up. Baggy clothes. Strategic camera angles during video calls. Declining every family dinner invitation with increasingly creative excuses. The nursery is hidden in Daniel's office with a lock on the door. When my parents visit, we shove everything into the closet, the crib we assembled at midnight, the car seat, the tiny clothes that make my chest ache when I fold them. Our marriage has become a bunker. It's us against everyone who loves us. Some nights, lying in bed with Daniel's hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick against his palm, I feel invincible. Like we're pulling off the heist of the century. Other nights, I wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, convinced I'm bleeding out, convinced this was all a horrible mistake, convinced I'm going to die and leave Daniel alone with the baby and the knowledge that I lied to everyone who could have helped. Those nights, I go to the bathroom and stare at myself in the mirror. My belly is enormous now at 32 weeks. I don't know how we've gotten away with this for so long. Oversized hoodies. Loose dresses. Never standing up during video calls. The pandemic normalized everyone staying behind their cameras, and I've exploited that ruthlessly. I look at my reflection and think, you're a liar. You're selfish. You're going to destroy everyone who loves you. But I also think, you're brave. You're taking control of your own life. You're not just the safe daughter who survived by hiding. I don't know which voice is right. Maybe they both are. It's Sunday afternoon when everything falls apart. We're on a video call with my parents and Leah. Standard weekly check-in. Daniel is sitting just off camera like always, coaching me through body language. Don't shift around, keep your shoulders visible, laugh but don't move too much. I'm wearing one of his massive hoodies, camera angled high and tight on my face. My nephew, Leah's son, now 3, is running around in the background of their video feed. He's at that age where he says whatever pops into his head, where he hasn't learned yet that some truths are supposed to stay hidden. He stops running, squints at the screen, points. "Mommy," he says, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Aunt Maya looks like you did when I was in your tummy." The world stops. I can feel Daniel freeze beside me, off camera. My mother's face strains of color. My father leans forward, squinting at the screen like he can somehow see through the camera angle and the hoodie and the lies. Leah appears behind my nephew, looking at me with dawning horror. Dead silence. The kind of silence that swallows sound and replaces it with a ringing in your ears. My mother's voice is barely a whisper. "Maya, stand up." I look at Daniel. His face is white, terrified. We have a split second to make a choice: keep lying, confess, something in between. I end the call. For exactly 3 seconds, there's peace. Then my phone explodes. 17 calls in the first 5 minutes. My phone. Daniel's phone. They're calling us simultaneously, both lines ringing in this horrible stereo harmony. The screen lights up again and again. Mom. Dad. Leah. Mom. 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 Text messages flood in so fast the phone vibrates continuously in my hand. Answer the phone. "Maya, please, we're coming over right now." Daniel, pick up. "What have you done?" "I'm so sorry," Daniel whispers. He's standing now, pacing, running his hands through his hair. "I'm so sorry I let you do this." That stops me cold. Let me. Like this was something I did to him. Like he was just along for the ride, a passive victim of my choices. But I don't have time to unpack that because my phone is ringing again, call number 31, and Daniel is looking at me like he's drowning, and I realize, he blames himself. He thinks he should have stopped me. Just like my parents will blame him. We don't answer the phone for an hour. We sit on the floor of our bedroom, holding each other, listening to the phones vibrate on the nightstand like angry insects. I'm shaking so hard my teeth chatter. Daniel just holds me, and I can feel his heart hammering against my back. When we finally answer, my mother's 31st call, the sound that comes through the phone isn't even language at first. It's just this raw, animal sobbing. My mother is crying so hard she's choking on it. My father takes the phone. His voice is steady in that terrifying way that means he's so angry he's gone calm. "How could you do this?" he says. "How could you both do this? Daniel, we trusted you to protect her." Daniel tries to explain. The monitoring, the specialists, the protocols. The twice-daily blood thinner injections. The weekly ultrasounds. The planned C-section at 37 weeks with blood products already reserved at the hospital. He rattles off statistics and medical terminology like he's defending a dissertation. My father cuts him off. My mother-in-law had specialists too. She still died. Leah had specialists. She still almost died. This is different. How? My father's voice breaks. How is it different? You're still gambling with her life. And for what? So you can be parents? You think that matters if she's dead? They demand we come to their house immediately. We refuse. They threaten to drive over. Daniel says if they show up unannounced, we'll call the police. I barely recognize his voice, there's an edge to it I've never heard before, something sharp and dangerous. The conversation ends with my mother screaming, "You're killing yourself and making your husband watch." Then the line goes dead. We sit in silence. Daniel is still holding my hand, but his grip is mechanical now, like he's forgotten he's doing it. I look at him and realize, he's starting to believe them. I call my OB that night, sobbing so hard I can barely explain what happened. Dr. Martinez has been seeing me since week 6. She's the one who designed my entire protocol, who checks my blood work every week, Who knows exactly how many times I've injected myself with heparin and exactly what my clotting factors look like. Your parents aren't wrong to be scared, she says carefully. But you're not, Leah. You're being monitored. We've caught everything early. You're doing everything right. Everything right. Like there's a formula for this. Like if I just follow the steps precisely enough, nothing bad can happen. Daniel asks a question that's been haunting him for 5 months. What are the odds if something goes wrong during delivery? Dr. Martinez is quiet for too long. Depends on what goes wrong. But Daniel, you're listed as medical power of attorney. If there's a choice between Maya and the baby, you decide. Not her parents. That night, lying in bed in the dark, I ask him, if it comes to that, what would you choose? He doesn't answer. The silence stretches out between us like a physical thing. I don't ask again. Over the next 3 days, Daniel becomes someone I don't recognize. He checks my blood pressure obsessively, 4 times a day, writing everything down in a notebook like he's collecting evidence. He won't let me walk upstairs alone. He researches every possible complication on medical databases until 2 a.m., and I'll wake up to find him reading articles about disseminated intravascular coagulation and amniotic fluid embolisms. He barely sleeps. When he does, he wakes up gasping, reaching for me in the dark to make sure I'm still breathing. I find him in the nursery at 2 in the morning on the 3rd day, sitting in the rocking chair we assembled together, holding the ultrasound photo from week 20. I think your parents are right, he says without looking at me. I think I'm going to lose you. And it's my fault because I didn't fight harder to stop this. I sit down on the floor in front of him. You couldn't have stopped me. I should have tried. I removed my IUD without telling you, Daniel. I got pregnant on purpose and then pretended it was an accident. What exactly were you supposed to stop? He finally looks at me. You really did that? You really planned this? I realize I've never said it out loud before. Never admitted even to myself that the pregnancy wasn't some cosmic accident, some failure of backup birth control. That I'd made a choice and then spent 5 months pretending I hadn't. Yeah, I whisper. I did. He gets up and leaves the room. I hear the bathroom door lock. The sound of him throwing up. I've broken something I don't know how to fix. 3 days later, I wake up to my mother standing in our bedroom doorway. It's 6 a.m. The sun isn't even up yet. She's just there, silhouetted against the hallway light, staring at my belly visible under the sheets. How did you get in? I ask stupidly, still half asleep. Daniel's mother gave me a spare key, she says. Last year. For emergencies. I look at Daniel. He's awake too, frozen beside me. This is an emergency, my mother says. My father and Leah are downstairs. They've driven 4 hours in the middle of the night. They have bags with them, overnight bags, like they're planning to stay. Like they're staging an intervention. The confrontation happens at our kitchen table. Leah pulls up her shirt without warning, showing the long vertical scar from her emergency hysterectomy. It's thick and ropey, still pink after 3 years. Do you remember what I told you in the hospital? She asks me. Her voice is steady, but her hands are shaking. I told you I could feel myself dying. The cold starting in my fingers and spreading up my arms. The confusion. I couldn't remember my own son's name, Maya. I was bleeding out and I couldn't remember why I was there or who the baby was. She turns to Daniel. You held my hand in that hospital room. You told me I'd be okay. Do you remember? He nods, miserable. And now you're going to watch Maya die the exact same way? Daniel stands up abruptly and leaves the room. I can hear him crying in the bathroom, the same horrible gasping sobs from 3 nights ago. My parents present their options. Immediate hospitalization under their supervision until delivery. They'll be present for all medical decisions. They've consulted with lawyers. They can't force me, but they can make Daniel's life miserable for allowing this. They can contest medical power of attorney. They can claim he's not acting in my best interest. You're 28 years old, my father says. You're not a child. But you're acting like one. And we're not going to stand by and watch you die because you want to prove some point. What point do you think I'm trying to prove? I ask. That you're not afraid, my mother says immediately. That you're not like me, someone who chose to be scared instead of brave. That hits me like a physical blow. Because she's right. That's exactly what this is. When Daniel comes back into the room, his eyes are red and swollen. He won't look at me. My mother says something about the bleeding scare in week 28. The room tilts. What bleeding scare? I ask slowly. My mother looks confused. Daniel called us 2 weeks ago. He said you had light spotting and he was worried. I turn to look at my husband. He can't meet my eyes. You called them, I say. It's not a question. He just stands there. You've been talking to them. Behind my back. For 2 weeks. Maya, get out. Please, get out. He leaves. The door closes behind him. I'm alone with my parents and my sister, and I realize, I was never us against them. It was always just me against everyone. The next 2 weeks are a nightmare wrapped in routine. My parents eventually leave, but only after I agree to video calls with Dr. Martinez where they can participate. My lawyer confirms they have no legal standing to force anything, but the emotional warfare continues via text and voicemail. Daniel moves into the guest room. I don't ask him to, he just does it, carrying his pillow down the hallway like a refugee. We communicate through brief, cold exchanges about logistics. He still drives me to medical appointments, but we don't speak in the car. At night, I can hear him crying through the wall. My mother calls every day. Sometimes she's sobbing. Sometimes she's silent, just breathing into the phone. Once, she plays a voicemail from the night Leah almost died, my own voice from 3 years ago, 25 years old, begging anyone listening to save my sister, promising I'd never do anything to put my family through this again. You made me a promise, my mother says after the recording ends. You stood in that hospital and you promised me. I know. Then why? I don't have an answer. Or I have too many answers. Because I wanted to know if I could. Because I was tired of being the safe daughter. Because I needed to prove I could risk something too. Because when Leah was dying, I was useless, couldn't donate blood, couldn't help, couldn't do anything but stand there because my genetic defect made me ineligible to save her. Because some terrible part of me needed to prove I wasn't just a coward hiding behind a promise. At 35 weeks, I have a panic attack so severe Daniel calls 911. The paramedics find me hyperventilating in the bathroom, convinced I'm bleeding out even though I'm not, convinced every twinge is the beginning of the end. They don't take me to the hospital. Just sit with me until I can breathe again, until my heart rate drops below 140. Daniel holds my hand the whole time, and it's the first time he's touched me in 2 weeks. After they leave, we sit on the bathroom floor together. I don't know if I can do this, he says. The birth? Any of it. Being your power of attorney. Making that choice if it comes to it. I don't know if I can, Maya. Because I don't know if you'd even want me to save you, or if you'd see it as me taking away your choice again. You didn't take away my choice. I made my choice before you even knew there was a choice to make. Exactly, he says. You removed your IUD. You stopped taking birth control. You got pregnant and then you told me about it like it was some surprise we had to deal with together. But it wasn't a surprise to you, was it? You chose this before I ever had a say. I want to argue. But he's right. Would you have said yes if I'd asked? I ask instead. No. Because I love you more than I love the idea of being a father. But you didn't even trust me enough to have that conversation. We sit in silence. Our marriage is rubble. We're living in the ruins of it, trying to figure out if there's anything left to salvage. In therapy the next day, I've been seeing someone since week 16, I finally say out loud what I've never admitted to anyone, including myself. I don't know if I got pregnant because I wanted a baby, or because I needed to prove I wasn't a coward. My therapist waits. When Leah was in the hospital, I wanted to help. Donate blood, donate organs, anything. But I couldn't. My clotting disorder made me ineligible. I just stood there. Useless. My parents' entire world was collapsing around Leah, and I was just the safe daughter who survived by hiding. And getting pregnant? Proved I could risk something too. That I wasn't just hiding anymore. Even if it meant risking your life? Especially if it meant risking my life. I'm crying now, the ugly kind of crying where you can't breathe right. I used Daniel's love for me as permission. I made the choice before telling him and then presented it as something we were deciding together. I lied to everyone. Including myself. My therapist hands me tissues. What are you going to do with that knowledge? I don't know. I'm 35 weeks pregnant. It's too late to do anything except survive this. And then? And then I have to figure out if Daniel can forgive me. And if I can forgive myself. At 37 weeks and 2 days, I go into labor. It's early, earlier than the planned C-section at 37 weeks, 6 days. I'm home alone. Daniel is at work, his first full day back in the office in months. He's been trying to maintain some normalcy, some sense that he still has a life outside of this. The contractions start as a dull ache and escalate rapidly. Within 30 minutes, I can barely stand. I call Daniel, then 911. The ambulance arrives. I'm on a gurney, being loaded into the back. Everything is moving too fast. The paramedics are asking questions I can't focus on. Someone radios ahead to the hospital: high-risk pregnancy, factor V Leiden, possible preterm labor, patient on heparin protocol. Daniel meets me at the hospital. He's in sweatpants and a t-shirt, like he just ran out of the office without changing. His face is white. They rush me to labor and delivery. Dr. Martinez is already there. She was paged as soon as the ambulance called it in. She does a quick exam and her face goes tight. Baby's in distress. We need to go now. Emergency C-section. They're prepping me, getting in 4-line in, explaining everything too fast. Someone asks about emergency contacts. I give them Daniel's information. Someone else says, parents are already listed as secondary contacts. No. Someone must have called them, a nurse says apologetically. They're in the waiting room. My mother. My father. Leah. They're here. They try to follow me toward the OR. Security blocks them. I can hear my mother screaming as they wheel me away, please don't leave me like my mother did. Daniel, don't let her do this. Daniel has to choose, come with me, or stay with my mother who's collapsing in the hallway. He chooses me. He's holding my hand as they prep me for the epidural. The anesthesiologist is explaining something about feeling pressure but not pain. Nurses are everywhere, moving with practiced efficiency. Daniel leans down, his lips close to my ear. I'm so angry at you. But I love you. Please don't leave me. Then there's the epidural, the numbness spreading down my body, the strange sensation of being awake but disconnected. They put up a curtain. I can't see anything below my chest. Daniel is sitting beside my head, still holding my hand. Dr. Martinez's voice, starting now. I feel pressure. Tugging. Strange pulling sensations. Daniel won't look at what they're doing, he's just staring at my face, memorizing it like he thinks he might never see it again. Then, cry. A baby crying. It's a girl, someone says. I try to see, but the curtain is in the way. They're doing something over there, multiple voices talking at once. The baby is still crying. That's good. Crying is good. Then, BP dropping. Uterus isn't contracting. Dr. Martinez. I can't hear the rest. Everything goes muffled, like I'm underwater. I can see Daniel's mouth moving, but I can't hear what he's saying. Someone is pushing him out of the way. More people flood into the OR. Alarms start going off. Daniel is yelling something. A nurse is trying to pull him toward the door. He's fighting her, trying to get back to me. The last thing I see before everything goes sideways is his face, terrified, destroyed, still reaching for me. Then nothing. I wake up in stages. First, awareness of sound, beeping machines, voices in the hallway, someone's shoes squeaking on linoleum. Then sensation, pain, dull and distant like it's happening to someone else. Then sight, fluorescent lights, those horrible white lights I remember from Leah's hospital room. Daniel is asleep in a chair beside my bed, holding my hand. He looks destroyed. Unshaven. Eyes swollen. Still wearing the same sweatpants and t-shirt from before. How long has it been? I try to say his name, but my throat is too dry. I make a sound, barely a whisper. He jerks awake immediately. Maya. He's crying. Oh gosh, you're awake. You're awake. A nurse comes in, checks my vitals, adjusts something on the fourth. Welcome back, she says warmly. You gave everyone quite a scare. The baby? I managed to croak. Healthy. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. She's in the nursery. We'll bring her in once the doctor clears you. Daniel is still crying, pressing my hand to his face. I thought you were gone. I thought I lost you. The doctor comes in, Dr. Martinez, looking exhausted. She explains, uterine atony. My uterus wouldn't contract after delivery. They gave me medications, tried manual massage, everything in the protocol. Nothing worked. I hemorrhaged. Required 3 units of blood, emergency medication to force uterine contraction. I came within minutes of an emergency hysterectomy. But I stabilized. I'm alive. Your parents are outside, Dr. Martinez says carefully. They've been here since you went into surgery. They'd like to see you, if you're up for it. I look at Daniel. He nods. They've been here the whole time. All of them. When my parents come in, no one speaks for a long time. My mother just stands there, staring at me like she's afraid I'll disappear if she blinks. My father has his arm around her, holding her upright. Finally, my mother whispers, "I heard you coding." I was standing outside the OR and I heard them call the code team. I realize, she's lived this 3 times now. Her mother dying in childbirth. Leah nearly dying. Me coding on the operating table. 3 generations of women bleeding. 2 surviving. I'm sorry, I say. It's inadequate. But it's all I have. I heard them call the code, my mother repeats, like she can't hear me. And I stood outside that door and I realized, I'd rather have you alive and hating me forever than dead because I tried to control you. She sits down in the other chair, across from Daniel. She looks smaller than I remember. Older. When I was 30, she says, before I had Leah, I got pregnant. I terminated it. I stare at her. I've never heard this. My mother had just died. Bled out in childbirth when I was 18. I was terrified. I couldn't do what she did. So I chose myself over a potential child. She's crying now, but silently, tears just streaming down her face. I've carried guilt about that for 32 years. Made myself believe I killed a baby to save myself. When I had you and Leah, I was terrified every single day. When Leah almost died, it was like watching my mother die all over again. And I couldn't watch you make that choice. I couldn't survive you choosing the baby over yourself. I didn't choose, I know. But I thought you were. I thought you were doing what my mother did. Risking everything for a child. And I couldn't let you. So I tried to control you. I tried to make you promise to choose yourself. But all I did was make you feel like you had to choose between me and your own life. She reaches across and takes my hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Later, hours later, when my parents have gone to the cafeteria and Leah has taken them for a walk, Daniel and I are alone. I called your parents 2 weeks ago, he says without preamble. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Or if I should tell you. Or if you already knew and were just waiting for me to confess. Why did you call them? Because I was terrified. Not just of losing you, though yes, that, but of being the husband who let you die. Of everyone knowing I supported this and blaming me. I was a coward. He looks at me directly for the first time. When you were coding, I stood outside that OR and listened to the alarms and I realized, I'd never actually dealt with the reality that you might die. I'd been in denial the entire pregnancy, going through motions, pretending the statistics didn't apply to us. Daniel, I don't know if I can forgive you for lying to me about getting pregnant. And I don't know if you can forgive me for calling your parents. But I know I want to try. It's honest. It's not a happy ending. It's just honest. They bring Grace in a few hours later. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Dark hair. Daniel's nose. My mother's eyes. I hold her and feel relief, terror, gratitude. And underneath it all, I almost died for you. I don't know if I would make the same choice again. The thought should scare me. Instead, it just feels true. 6 weeks later, at my follow-up appointment, Dr. Martinez delivers a final piece of news: the hemorrhaging caused significant uterine scarring. Asherman syndrome. I can never carry another pregnancy. I sit in the exam room, processing this. Daniel is with me, holding my hand. I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez says. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. But here's the thing, I feel relieved. I didn't want more children. I'd wanted to prove I could have one. That I could risk something and survive. That night, I tell Daniel. He's quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling of our bedroom. We're back in the same bed now, but carefully, like strangers relearning how to share space. Good, he finally says. Because I don't think our marriage could survive it again. It's brutal. But it's honest. We're in couples therapy twice a week now. Making slow progress. Learning how to trust each other again, or maybe learning how to trust each other for the first time, since our entire relationship was built on me making decisions and presenting them as mutual choices. Grace is healthy. Thriving. My parents visit weekly. My mother watches her breathe like she's memorizing each inhale. The distance remains, a recognition that love can be violent, that protection can be suffocation. Leah came by last week. She held Grace for a long time, just rocking her, not saying anything. Then she whispered, "I'm glad she's here. I'm glad you made it." A pause. Then, quieter, "I'm sorry I tried to stop you. I was just so scared." I understand. Fear makes us try to control what we can't control. And sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who cage us best. The smell of hand sanitizer still makes me nauseous. I keep it in the house. Grace's pediatrician says it's important, but I have to hold my breath when I use it. The fluorescent lights at the grocery store sometimes trigger something in my chest, a tightness that feels like drowning on dry land. But I also have new sense memories now. The weight of Grace sleeping on my chest, that perfect heavy warmth. The smell of her head, that inexplicable baby smell that's somehow both sweet and clean and entirely unique. The sound of her breathing at night, steady and strong. Daniel still watches me sometimes like he's afraid I'll disappear. I catch him checking that I'm breathing when he thinks I'm asleep. He counts Grace's breaths too, I've noticed. We're both haunted by the things that almost happened. One night, 3 months postpartum, I wake up to find him sitting in the nursery in the dark, just watching Grace sleep in her crib. "Do you regret it?" he asks without turning around. He knew I was there. "Getting pregnant? Lying to you? Which part?" "Any of it." I think about this question. I've been thinking about it for months now, in therapy, in the quiet moments when Grace is sleeping and Daniel is at work and I'm alone with my thoughts. I look at Grace, her tiny chest rising and falling. Then at Daniel, this man who almost lost me, who betrayed me, who saved me, who stayed. "I regret the lying," I say finally. "I regret putting you through that. I regret hurting my parents. But I don't regret Grace. Even knowing what it cost." "I don't know if that's enough for me," Daniel says. "But I'm still here. It's not a happy ending. It's an honest one." My parents still video chat with us weekly. But now my mother keeps the camera on Grace most of the time. I notice her eyes, always checking, always watching for signs of something wrong. She looks at Grace the way she must have looked at me and Leah when we were babies. "Please don't disappear. Please don't make me bury you." I wonder if I'll look at Grace the same way in 25 years. If I'll try to protect her so much that I suffocate her. If she'll have to choose between me and her own life someday. The cycle doesn't end. It just changes shape. Last week, I was giving Grace a bath. She was splashing, delighted by the water, and I was laughing at her joy. Then I looked down and saw my hands under the water, my hands holding my daughter, keeping her safe, keeping her from slipping under. For just a second, I thought about my mother finding Leah in that pool of blood. About my grandmother dying before anyone could save her. About the moment in the OR when the alarms went off and Daniel thought he was losing me. 3 generations of women. 3 different choices. All of us trying to survive the bodies we inherited. Grace looked up at me and smiled, her first real smile, not gas or reflex but actual joy. And I thought, I survived. I made you. We're both here. Maybe that's enough. Daniel asked me last night if I was happy. We were lying in bed, Grace finally asleep after an hour of fussing, both of us exhausted. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Are you?" "I don't know either." We lay there in the dark, holding hands, 2 people who love each other and hurt each other and survived something that should have destroyed them. "I'm glad you're alive," Daniel said finally. "Even when I'm angry at you. Even when I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm glad you're alive." "Me too," I whispered. "I'm glad I'm alive too." It's the truth. Not the whole truth. The whole truth is complicated and messy and includes the fact that some part of me still wonders if I did the right thing, if the cost was worth it, if I was brave or just reckless. But it's enough truth for right now. My therapist asked me in our last session what I would tell my 25-year-old self, standing in that ICU making promises to my mother. I thought about it for a long time. I'd tell her, some promises are made to be broken. But breaking them has a cost. And you have to be willing to pay it. "And were you?" she asked. "Willing to pay it?" I looked at her. I am paying it. Every day. In my marriage. In my relationship with my parents. In the way I wake up sometimes at 3 a.m., convinced I'm bleeding out. I'm paying it. Was it worth it? I didn't answer. Because I don't know yet. Maybe I won't know for years. Maybe I won't know until Grace is older, until I can see what kind of person she becomes, what kind of mother I become. Or maybe there is no answer. Maybe some choices don't have a worth that can be calculated. They just are. I video chatted with my mother yesterday. Grace was sleeping in my arms, and I was just letting the camera run while we talked about nothing, the weather, my mother's garden, a recipe Leah wanted to share. Then my mother said, very quietly, "You look like my mother in that photo in the hallway. The one from before I was born. She's holding my sister the same way." I'd never seen that photo. I didn't know you had a sister. She died at 2. Pneumonia. Before I was born. My mother had 4 children. 2 died. She survived them. Then died having me. The math clicked into place. My grandmother had buried 2 children before dying in childbirth herself. The genetic curse went back further than I'd known. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't want you to think death was inevitable. I wanted you to think you could escape it by being careful. By making promises. But we can't escape it, can we? We can just choose how we face it." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You sound like her. Like my mother." She wrote in her diary, I found it after she died, she wrote, "I am afraid. But I choose this anyway. I choose life even knowing it might kill me." We sat in silence, the video call connecting us across 45 minutes of highway, across generations of women who chose and survived and died and tried. "I'm sorry I made you promise," my mother said finally. "I should have trusted you to make your own choice." "I'm sorry I broke it," I said. "I should have trusted you with the truth." Neither of us said it was okay. Because it wasn't okay. But we're both here. We're both trying. That's something. I used to think my mother banned me from having children because she didn't trust me. Now I know the truth, she banned me because she trusted me enough to obey. The moment I disobeyed, I became someone she didn't recognize. And maybe that's what I wanted all along, to become someone even I didn't know yet. But becoming someone new meant Daniel had to become someone new too, a man who watches his wife almost die because he couldn't stop loving her enough to leave. A man who betrayed her because he was terrified of being blamed for her death. A man who held her hand in the oar and told her he loved her even while he was furious at her. We survived. But we're not the same people who made that decision 8 months ago. Grace is stirring now, making those little grunting noises that mean she'll be crying for food in about 30 seconds. Daniel is already getting up, muscle memory, reaching for her before she fully wakes. We've gotten good at this, the midnight dance of parenting, the silent communication of exhaustion and teamwork. He lifts her from the bassinet and brings her to me. Our hands touch for a moment in the transfer, and he squeezes my fingers. A small gesture. But it means, I'm here. I'm still here. We're still trying. I feed Grace in the dark, and Daniel sits beside me, not saying anything, just being present. This is our life now. Messy and complicated and honest in ways it never was before. I don't know if we're better or worse for what we've been through. I just know we're different. And maybe that's enough. Maybe survival is enough. Maybe choosing each other again, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, is enough. Grace finishes eating and falls back asleep against my chest. I feel her heartbeat, steady and strong. I feel Daniel's hand on my shoulder, warm and real. I feel my own breath, in and out, in and out. I'm alive. We're all alive. For tonight, that's enough.
Story 3.
I loaned my best friend $8,200 for her dream wedding. Then got a message, "We're keeping the bridal party small, you understand, right?" My boyfriend said, "Don't overreact." So I didn't. I canceled the catering deposit I'd personally guaranteed and removed my name from the venue contract. At 11:43 p.m., her fiancé called me. I let it go to voicemail twice, just to be sure I wanted to hear it. I need you to understand something before we go any further. I'm not the kind of person who does things like this. I don't blow up friendships. I don't sabotage weddings. I'm the person who shows up early to help set up chairs, who brings backup bobby pins, who holds your hair back when you've had too much champagne at the bachelorette party. I'm the reliable one. The steady one. The one who transfers $8,200 at 2 in the morning because your best friend is crying on the phone about how her dream wedding is falling apart and you're the only person in the world who can save it. That's who I was 6 months ago, anyway. Let me paint you the picture. It's 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, and I'm sitting cross-legged on my bed with my laptop balanced on my knees, the screen casting that blue-white fluorescent glow across my face that makes you look like you're underwater. My bank account is pulled up in one tab, Jenna's texts are open in another, and I'm hovering my cursor over the transfer button like I'm defusing a bomb instead of helping my best friend. "You're my angel," she texted 3 minutes after I hit send. "I literally can't do this without you." I remember smiling at that. Actually smiling? I took a screenshot because I wanted to remember the feeling of being someone's angel, of being the person who could fix things. I still have that screenshot. I look at it sometimes when I need to remind myself how quickly angel can turn into enemy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Jenna and I met 14 years ago, freshman year of college, at some terrible mixer where they were serving punch that tasted like cough syrup and regret. We ended up on the dorm roof at 3 a.m., and she pointed out constellations she definitely made up. I'm pretty sure there's no constellation called the spatula, and we laughed until we couldn't breathe. We got matching tattoos of the coordinates from that night. Right wrist. 40.7128 degrees north, 74.0060 degrees west, not actual constellations, just the latitude and longitude of where we were standing. They're small enough that most people don't notice them unless you're holding hands or hugging or doing all the things best friends do when they think nothing will ever come between them. We were going to be in each other's weddings. We talked about it 100 times. 1,000 times. The kind of bridesmaids who ugly cry during the vows and give speeches that are equal parts embarrassing stories and genuine love. That was supposed to be us. So when Jenna got engaged to Brad last year, I wasn't surprised when she asked me to be her maid of honor. Except she didn't. Not officially. She said, "Obviously you're going to be standing up there with me, right?" And I said, "Obviously," and we hugged, and I thought that was that. Looking back, I should have noticed she never actually said the words. Maid of honor. She just let me assume. I assumed a lot of things, actually. Brad works in tech sales, which means he makes good money but somehow never seems to have any. Jen is a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm, pulls in decent salary, but she's also got credit card debt that she mentioned casually once and then never brought up again. The kind of debt that makes you change the subject when someone asks if you want to split an appetizer. When they got engaged, they immediately started planning this massive wedding. 200 guests. Destination-ish venue 3 hours upstate with this gorgeous old barn and string lights and a view of the mountains that look like a Thomas Kincaid painting. The kind of place you see on Instagram and think, that must cost a fortune. It did. 4 months before the transfer, Jenna started mentioning money problems. Little comments. The venue wants the deposit next week and Brad's bonus got delayed. My credit got dinged because of that identity theft thing, everything's complicated. Brad's mom was going to help but she's having some financial issues. Every time, I'd offer to help. "What do you need?" I'd ask. "How much are we talking?" No, I can't ask you to do that," she'd say. But then she'd sigh. She'd go quiet. She'd let the silence stretch until I felt like I was the one being unreasonable for not offering more. And then one night, that night, 2 a.m., Wednesday, she called me sobbing. The venue was going to give away their date if they didn't get the deposit by Friday. $8,200. They didn't have it. Brad's mother couldn't come through. Her parents were tapped out. They were going to lose everything. "I don't know what to do," she cried. "Maya, I don't know what to do." I had $8,200 in my savings account. It was supposed to be my emergency fund. 6 months of expenses, the way all the financial advice columns tell you to save. I was proud of that account. I built it up slowly, freelancing extra projects, saying no to trips and dinners and anything that wasn't strictly necessary. "I'll loan it to you," I heard myself say. "I'll send it right now. We can figure out a payment plan once things calm down after the wedding." "Maya, no. I can't let you, Jenna, you're my best friend. Let me do this." There was a pause. Then she said, "I love you so much. You're saving my life right now." So I opened my laptop. I logged into my bank. I transferred $8,200 to her account and felt that warm, glowing feeling you get when you do something generous. Something big. I felt needed. Important. Like I was the kind of friend people write about. The confirmation email arrived at 2:17 a.m. I forwarded it to Jenna so she'd have proof for the venue first thing in the morning. "You're my angel. I literally can't do this without you." I fell asleep smiling. My boyfriend Derek wasn't smiling when I told him the next day. We were in my apartment, him on the couch scrolling through his phone, me making coffee in the kitchen, and I mentioned it casually like it was no big deal. "Oh, by the way, I loaned Jenna money for her wedding deposit last night." He looked up. "How much?" $8,200. His face did this thing. This tiny freeze. Like someone hit pause for a second and then pressed play again. Wow. That's a lot of trust. Not that's generous. Not you're a good friend. Trust. She'll pay me back, I said, even though we hadn't discussed timeline or terms or anything resembling a plan. I'm sure she will, Derek said, but the way he said it made it sound like he was sure of the opposite. Then he went back to his phone. Derek and I had been together for 2 years. He's not a bad guy. He's just careful, risk-averse. The kind of person who reads restaurant reviews for 45 minutes before deciding where to eat, and then orders the same chicken dish he always orders anyway. He works in middle management at an insurance company, and he's good at his job specifically because he never rocks the boat. He'd been making comments about Jenna for months. She's kind of high maintenance, don't you think? Does she always need this much attention? I feel like you're more invested in her life than she is in yours. I'd always defended her. She's just going through a stressful time. Wedding planning is hard. You don't know her like I do. But his reaction to the money bothered me. The silence that lasted 47 seconds, I counted, bothered me. The fact that he didn't ask if I was okay, if I could afford it, if I needed anything. He just said trust like it was a warning. I should have listened. 2 days later, Jenna called. She needed me to do her one more favor. The venue required a co-guarantor on the contract, someone to share liability in case of damages or cancellation. Brad was traveling for work and couldn't make the signing appointment. Could I possibly go with her? It's just a formality, she said. Just a signature. You won't actually be responsible for anything, the deposit covers everything. The deposit I just funded. I should have said no. I should have asked questions. But I was still riding the high of being helpful, being needed, being the angel who saved the day. So I went. I signed. The venue manager, Carol, seemed uncomfortable with the arrangement. She asked me twice if I understood what co-guarantor meant. If I understood the liability. I said yes. I signed on the line. I didn't read it carefully. I trusted Jenna. The next few weeks were fine. Normal. Jenna texted me updates about dress shopping, about flowers, about her future mother-in-law's opinions on the color scheme. We had lunch twice. She paid both times, which I thought was sweet. She was probably trying to thank me without making it weird. Then, about 3 weeks after I'd loaned her the money, she posted photos on Instagram. A beach. Turquoise water. Sunset cocktails. She's wearing a white bikini. Brad has his arm around her waist. They're golden hour gorgeous, and the caption says, "Needed this getaway before wedding chaos," palm tree emoji, sparkles emoji. The location tag, Turks and Caicos. I stared at that post for a long time. Turks and Caicos isn't cheap. Even the budget resorts run $400 to $600 per night. They were there for 5 days based on the photo sequence. That's at least $2,000 for the room alone. Plus flights. Plus food. Plus those cocktails with little umbrellas. I told myself it was fine. Maybe they'd been saving for this trip separately. Maybe Brad's bonus came through. Maybe it was a gift from someone. But something felt off. Like a sweater with one loose thread that you keep pulling. I didn't say anything. I liked the photos. Left a comment, "So beautiful. You guys deserve this." Derek saw me looking at the photos that night. "See? They're fine. They figured it out." "Yeah," I said. "I guess they did." 3 more weeks passed. Jenna and I texted less frequently. Not dramatically less, just hours instead of minutes between responses. When I suggested bridesmaid dress shopping, she said, "We're still figuring out the vibe." When I asked about the bachelorette party, she said, "Brad's sister is kind of taking point on that." Brad's sister. Who I'd met once. Who Jenna used to complain about because she was judgmental and always competing. Then, exactly 6 weeks after the money transfer, Jenna created a group chat, ring emoji, bride tribe, ring emoji, with 7 women. I was number 4 on the list. Not maid of honor. Not even second. Just 4th. I told myself it didn't matter. Phone contact lists are random. It's not like she ranked us. But then I started noticing things. In the group chat, Brad's sister was posting photos of bridesmaid dress options. Planning spa days. Talking about hair and makeup trials. I wasn't included in any of it. When I asked, Jenna said, "Oh, we're still working out those details." Maybe give her some space, Derek said when I mentioned feeling left out. Wedding planning is stressful. She's probably overwhelmed. So I gave her space. I waited for her to reach out. I liked her Instagram posts. I sent encouraging texts. I didn't push. And then, on a Tuesday at 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Hey babe, so Brad and I have been talking. We're keeping the bridal party super intimate. Just immediate family vibes, you know? You understand, right? Folded hands emoji, 2 hearts emoji, you're still totally invited to everything else. I read it 4 times. My hands started shaking. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. Just this small tremor that made it hard to hold my phone steady. I walked into the living room where Derek was watching something on his laptop. I held out my phone. Look at this, I said. He squinted at the screen. Read it. Handed the phone back. Don't overreact, he said. Weddings are stressful. She probably has family pressure. Brad's mom is probably pushing for his sisters to be in the party. You know how that stuff goes. I gave her $8,000. I know. But that was a loan to help a friend. Not payment for a bridesmaid spot. He wasn't wrong. Technically. But also, he was completely wrong in every way that mattered. So I should just. What? Say no problem and show up to her wedding like nothing happened? Yes, Derek said. Exactly that. Because if you make this a thing, you'll look like you only loaned her money to buy your way into the bridal party. You don't want to be that person. That person. Like there was a category of person who rightfully felt hurt when someone took their life savings and then casually discarded them via text message. I didn't respond to Jenna that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the message until the words stopped looking like words. I thought about the tattoo on my wrist. About 3 a.m. on a dorm roof. About 14 years of friendship reduced to you understand, right? And then I opened my laptop. I didn't do it to be petty. I did it because I suddenly, desperately needed to understand what I'd actually signed. What I was actually on the hook for. I pulled up the venue contract. The one I'd signed 6 weeks ago. The venue manager, Carol, had seemed uncomfortable with the arrangement. She'd asked me twice if I understood what co-guarantor meant. If I understood the liability. I'd said yes. I'd signed. Now I actually read it. Co-guarantor. Jointly and severally liable for all costs, damages, and cancellation fees up to $12,000. 30-day withdrawal notice required, or withdrawal effective immediately upon removal of financial support and payment of any outstanding balance. $12,000. I could be on the hook for $12,000 for a wedding I wasn't even going to be in. I found Carol's direct number at the bottom of the contract. I didn't call that night. I waited until morning. 8:03 a.m., the moment they opened. Riverside Barn, this is Carol. Hi Carol, this is Maya Chen. I co-signed a venue contract for a wedding in December, Jenna Morrison and Brad Keating? There was a pause. Yes, I remember you. I need to discuss removing myself as co-guarantor. The pause got longer. I see. Can I ask why? I'm no longer going to be part of the wedding party, and I'd like to limit my financial exposure. I understand. Let me review the contract language. This is a bit unusual. Can I call you back this afternoon? Of course. I hung up. My heart was pounding like I'd just done something illegal instead of something completely reasonable. Derek came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. Did you text Jenna back? Not yet. You should probably just tell her it's fine. End the drama. Is it drama to want to understand a contract I signed? He looked at me like I was being difficult. You're making this bigger than it is. Maybe I was. Or maybe it was already big and I was just finally seeing it. Carol called back at 3:47 p.m. Maya, I reviewed your contract. You can remove yourself as co-guarantor with 30 days notice, or immediately if you're withdrawing financial support. However, she paused, and I could hear papers rustling. If you withdraw immediately, you and the couple become jointly responsible for ensuring the remaining balance is paid within 72 hours. That's $6,400. If it's not paid, we'll have to cancel the booking. As co-guarantor, you signed agreeing to a maximum liability of $12,000 total, which would include your initial contribution plus any additional charges. My initial contribution? Yes, the $8,200 deposit that came from your name on the contract. She paused. That is what you're referring to, correct? My stomach dropped. Carol, can I ask, how was that deposit actually paid? What method? Another pause. This one longer. I can confirm that a deposit of $8,200 was received via bank transfer. It was. Let me see. It came from an account registered to the booking party. Not my account. Jenna's. Just like I'd sent it. But who made the final payment to the venue? I pressed. The payment that's currently on record? Ms. Chen, I'm not really supposed to share detailed payment information, but given your position as co-guarantor, she sighed. The deposit was initially paid, then there was a secondary payment that came through about 2 weeks later from a different account to satisfy some concerns about the initial payment source. That second payment is what we have on record now as the primary deposit. I really can't say more than that. 2 weeks after my transfer. Right around the time of Turks and Caicos. Thank you for clarifying, I managed. I hung up. Sat there trying to piece it together. I'd sent Jenna $8,200. She'd paid the venue. Then someone else, someone whose account I didn't know, had paid the venue a second time about 2 weeks later. Which meant the venue got paid twice, or got paid correctly the second time, which meant my money got. What? Refunded to Jenna? Kept by her? I needed more information. I did what any rational person would do. I spent the next 3 hours combing through every piece of information I had access to. I pulled up my own bank records. There it was, $8,200 transferred to Jenna's account, 6 weeks ago. Nothing since. No repayment. Not even a partial payment. I looked at the venue contract more carefully. It listed the deposit amount, $8,200. Expected balance due 1 month before the wedding, $6,400. Total venue cost, $14,600. The math was clean. Too clean. Then I remembered something. The catering. 3 weeks before the venue deposit crisis, Jenna had called me in a panic. The catering company needed a deposit. Her card was declined. She said it was because of the identity theft investigation, everything was frozen. Could I cover it? Just $1,800. She'd pay me back with the venue money once that all got sorted out. I'd said yes. I'd put it on my credit card. She'd promised to Venmo me back. She never did. I found the catering contract in my email. I'd guaranteed that deposit personally. And according to the contract terms, I could cancel with 14 days' notice before the event. The wedding was 7 weeks away. I had time. But I needed to understand what happened to my money first. I called the one person I knew who might be able to help me without asking too many questions. Zoe, a friend from yoga class who works in banking. Over coffee the next day, very casually, I mentioned I was trying to track down a payment discrepancy. Weird stuff with a wedding venue. I had sent money, but wasn't sure where it ended up. Do you know the names on the accounts? Zoe asked. The account I sent to was definitely Jenna Morrison. But the venue mentioned a secondary payment that came from someone else. I don't have details. Zoe stirred her latte. I really shouldn't do this, but if you give me the venue name, I can see if I can find anything about payment disputes or fraud flags. Not specifics, but sometimes patterns show up. 2 days later, Zoe called me. Okay, so I can't tell you details, but I can tell you that there was definitely some back and forth with that venue's payment processing. Like someone paid, then someone else paid, then there might have been a dispute about releasing the first payment. That's all I can say. A dispute? Yeah. Like maybe the venue held onto both payments temporarily, then returned one when the second came through from a more reliable source. What makes a source more reliable? Usually? An older account. Better credit history. Or like, a parent. A parent, Brad's mother. Patricia. Who Jenna had mentioned exactly 3 times, once to say she was helpful, once to say she was opinionated, and once to say she had financial issues and couldn't contribute to the wedding. The financial issues that were never mentioned again. I went home and did what I probably shouldn't have. I found Patricia on Facebook. Her privacy settings were tight, but her profile picture showed her at what looked like a charity gala from 2 months ago. She looked healthy. Well-dressed. Not someone having financial issues. I thought about the venue deposit. About a secondary payment. About Brad's mother who suddenly had financial problems that disappeared. Patricia paid the venue deposit. I was sure of it. Which meant one of 2 things. Either Jenna lied about needing my money for the venue, or Patricia found out what they'd done and paid the deposit herself to protect her son's wedding while demanding they return my money to me. Except they never did. Which meant they spent my $8,000 on something else. Like a vacation. I kept digging. I went back through Jenna's Instagram, looking at the dates of her posts around that 6-week period. The Turks and Caicos post. Then, just a week later, a photo of her in a wedding dress. A gorgeous dress. Lace and beading in a train that probably required its own zip code. The caption, "Found my dream dress. Can't believe it's really happening, 2 hearts emoji." I remembered her mentioning buying that dress. She'd said she'd been saving for years. That it was her one splurge. But I also remembered something else. 4 months ago, at a birthday dinner for one of our mutual friends, Jenna had gotten tipsy and complained about her credit card debt. $8,000. "I'll never get out from under this," she'd said. She'd been genuinely upset about it. 4 months later, she bought a $3,400 dress and went on a $3,000 vacation without mentioning the debt once. The math was too clean. Too perfect. 8,000 in debt. 8,000 from Maya. 8,000 spent on dress and vacation and whatever else. My money didn't go to the venue. It went to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford while making me feel like I was the only thing standing between them and disaster. I felt sick. Not angry yet. Just hollow. I started noticing other things too. Derek was on his phone more. Not unusual, he was always on his phone, but different. He'd close apps when I walked into the room. He'd turn the screen away. Little micro movements that I wouldn't have noticed before but now couldn't stop seeing. One night I walked into the bedroom and saw a notification banner before he swiped it away. Just for a second. Long enough to see, "Jenna, did you talk to her?" He locked his phone. "Hey. Didn't hear you come in." "Who was that?" "Work thing." I didn't push. I didn't want him to know I'd seen. Instead, I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and pressed my forehead against the mirror until the cold glass made my skin hurt. They were talking about me. Jenna was asking Derek to do something. To say something. To manage me. I felt like I was going insane. Like I'd stumbled into someone else's story and couldn't find my way back to my own. But I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. I needed one more piece of evidence. Something undeniable. So I did something I'm not proud of. I called Riverside Barn and asked if I could schedule a tour. I used my middle name, Rose, and said I was recently engaged and looking at venues for next year. Carol was the one who gave me the tour. She didn't recognize me at first. I'd worn my hair differently and put on sunglasses even though we were indoors. But halfway through, when we were walking through the garden area, she stopped. "Wait. You're Maya Chen, aren't you?" I pulled off the sunglasses. "Yes. I'm sorry. I needed to understand something." She looked around, like she was checking if anyone could hear us. Then she said, very quietly, "Look. I'm not supposed to say this. But I felt terrible about that signing. You seemed like a genuinely nice person, and I could tell you didn't fully understand what you were agreeing to." "What do you mean?" "The bride, your friend, she called me the day before you came in. She specifically asked me not to explain the full liability clause to you. She said you were skittish about legal stuff and that if I made a big deal out of it, you might back out. She asked me to just get your signature and move on." My breath caught. "And you did it?" "I tried to warn you," Carol said, defensive now. "I asked you twice if you understood. But you kept saying yes. I couldn't refuse to take your signature without cause. But I want you to know. This whole thing feels off. We've had other situations like this. Friends or family members who get roped into financial liability for weddings that don't always work out the way they're supposed to." "Has she paid the balance? The $6,400? Carol hesitated. "Not yet. It's due in 2 weeks." "What happens if she doesn't pay?" "Then we cancel. And anyone who's guaranteed the contract becomes liable for the cancellation fees. Which, according to the contract, could be up to the full $12,000 maximum between both guarantors." "Both guarantors?" "You and the couple jointly. The way the contract is structured, we can pursue any or all parties for the amount owed." I left without booking anything. Sat in my car in the parking lot. And that's when the cold, hollow feeling crystallized into something sharp and clear. I wasn't going to be the villain. But I also wasn't going to be the victim. I was going to be exactly what the contract said I could be: removed. That night, I started drafting letters. It took me 3 days to get them right. The first was a formal notice to Riverside Barn, removing myself as co-guarantor effective immediately due to material changes in my relationship with the wedding party and my withdrawal of financial support. I stated clearly that I had provided $8,200 to the bride with the understanding it would cover the venue deposit, but that I had since learned the deposit was paid from another source. I was therefore withdrawing any implied ongoing financial support. I included the contract section that allowed for immediate removal under these circumstances. I CC'd my cousin Marcus, who passed the bar 2 years ago and works in real estate law. His email signature looks impressively official even though he mostly does contract reviews for small businesses. The second letter was to the catering company, withdrawing my personal guarantee on the $1,800 deposit. The contract allowed for 14 days' notice, and I was well within that window. I didn't send them right away. I sat with them for 2 days. Read them over and over. Made sure every word was exactly what I meant. Derek came over on day 3. He had a key, had one for the past year, and let himself in like he always did. Grabbed a beer from my fridge, settled onto the couch. "Did you ever work things out with Jenna?" he asked. "Not yet. You should probably just let it go. It's not worth losing a friendship over." Something in me snapped. Not explosively. Quietly. Like a thread that's been pulled too tight for too long. "Did Jenna call you?" I asked. He looked up. "What?" "About 2 weeks ago. Did Jenna call you about me?" His face did that micro freeze again. Yeah. She was worried about you. She said you seemed upset about the bridal party thing and asked if I could help you see that it wasn't personal. "And what did you say?" "I said I'd try to help you let it go." "Let it go?" "Yeah. She was trying to protect you from embarrassment. She said you'd been really stressed about money and she didn't want you to feel obligated to spend more on bridesmaid stuff when you're not in a position to do that right now." "She said I was stressed about money?" "Yeah. She said you'd been struggling with freelance work and she felt bad that you'd loaned her money when you probably couldn't afford it. She wanted to make sure you weren't feeling pressure to keep spending." I stared at him. "Derek, I loaned her my entire emergency fund." "I know, and she feels terrible about that. But she said she's going to pay you back after the wedding. She just needs time." "When did she tell you this?" "Like 2 weeks ago? When she called." 2 weeks ago," I repeated slowly. "She told you she was going to pay me back?" "Yeah. And then she texted me 4 days ago to tell me I'm not in the bridal party?" I watched the realization hit him. Watched him understand that the timeline didn't work. That Jenna had been planning to exclude me while having my boyfriend run interference. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "I was trying to protect you," he said finally. "From what?" "From doing something you'd regret. From burning a bridge." "What about my bridge, Derek? Did you think about protecting that?" He didn't answer. He picked up his beer. Took a long drink. Set it down. "I think you're overreacting," he said. And that's when I knew. "I need your key back," I said. "What?" "Your key. To my apartment. I need it back." "Maya, come on, now please." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. But he pulled out his keyring and worked off the key to my apartment. Set it on the coffee table. "You're really doing this? Over a wedding?" "I'm doing this because you chose her comfort over my reality. And I can't be with someone who does that." He stood up. "Fine. Good luck with your dramatics." He left. The door clicked shut. I picked up his beer, still half full, and poured it down the sink. Then I sent the emails. 4:37 p.m. on Thursday. Both of them. Time-stamped. Legally documented. To Riverside Barn, formal removal as co-guarantor, effective immediately, with full explanation of my withdrawal of financial support. To the caterer, cancellation of personal guarantee and withdrawal of my $1,800 deposit coverage per the 14-day cancellation clause. Both required Jenna and Brad to cover the full amounts within the specified timeframes or lose their bookings. I forwarded both confirmation receipts to Jenna. No message. Just the receipts. Then I closed my laptop. Made dinner. Ate it slowly. Watched the sun set through my apartment window. At 11:43 p.m., my phone rang. Brad. I stared at his name on my screen. Watched it ring. Watched it go to voicemail. It rang again. 11:45 p.m. I let it go to voicemail again. I wanted to be sure I was ready to hear what he'd say. That I wasn't going to pick up and immediately apologize, smooth things over, fix everything like I always did. At midnight, I listened to the voicemails. The first one, Maya. I don't know what Jenna told you, but this is insane. We have 200 guests. The wedding is in 7 weeks. You can't just do this. Call me back. We need to fix this. His voice was tight, controlled, like he was trying very hard not to yell. The second one, recorded 6 minutes later. Okay, look. I know you're upset. Jenna shouldn't have handled the bridal party thing that way. But you're making this nuclear over a bridesmaid spot? This is our wedding, Maya. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. I saved both voicemails. Backed them up to 3 different cloud storage accounts. Then I went to sleep. Best sleep I'd had in weeks. Jenna called at 1:23 a.m. I woke up, saw her name, declined the call. She texted immediately, answer your phone. What did you do? I waited until morning. Made coffee. Showered. Got dressed. Then I responded. I removed myself from financial obligations for an event I'm not significantly involved in. I think you called it keeping things intimate. The response was instant. You're ruining my wedding because you didn't make the bridal party? Are you serious right now? Me, where did my $8,200 go? 5 minutes of silence. I could almost hear her trying to figure out how to answer. Jenna, I don't have to explain my finances to you. Me, you do when they're my finances. Turks and Caicos look beautiful, by the way. And that dress must have been expensive. Nothing. She didn't respond. Over the next 48 hours, I got 3 calls from Jenna's mother, Andrea, who cried and begged me to be reasonable. When I asked her about the money, she said, "You gave that as a gift." Jenna said you wanted to help. When I said it was explicitly a loan, she said, "That's not how Jenna described it." She said you were so excited to contribute to her special day. 2 emails from Patricia, Brad's mother, demanding I sign a liability waiver and threatening legal action. Marcus sent her a cease and desist for harassment. It was probably toothless legally, but it looked official enough to make her pause. 1 text from Derek, I can't be with someone who destroys people out of spite. I didn't even block his number. I just deleted the text and moved on. I also got 1 call from Zoe, my banking friend, who very carefully said, I shouldn't tell you this, but I did some more checking. That secondary payment to the venue? It came from Patricia Keating's account. A trust account, actually. And there are notes in the system about her disputing the initial payment setup because she found out about it after the fact. I thought you should know. So I'd been right. Brad's mother paid the venue deposit herself. Which meant she knew what they'd done with my money. Which meant everyone knew except me. Over the next week, I learned the rest. Not from Jenna, she stopped responding entirely, but from various people in our mutual friend circle who started asking questions once they realized something was wrong. One of Jenna's coworkers, Simone, called me. We'd met a few times at birthday dinners. Maya, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but Jenna's been saying some things at work. About you. Like what? Like you're jealous she's getting married. That you've been really clingy about the wedding planning and she had to cut you out of the bridal party because you were being too controlling. She said you loaned her money and now you're holding it over her head. My hands went cold. She said that? Yeah. She made it sound like you were trying to buy your way into being maid of honor. I didn't really believe it because that didn't seem like you, but now with everything happening. I just thought you should know what she's saying. Thank you for telling me. After I hung up, I just sat there, staring at nothing. She built the narrative before I even knew there was a story. I was the jealous friend. The controlling one. The person who couldn't handle not being the center of attention. By the time I found out the truth, I was already the villain. That's when I stopped feeling hollow and started feeling something sharper. Clearer. The venue called me 4 days after I sent my withdrawal letter. It was Carol. Maya, I wanted to give you a heads up. The couple hasn't paid the remaining balance. We're going to have to cancel their booking. As co-guarantor who withdrew support, you're not liable for the cancellation fees. Your withdrawal letter was clear about your position. But I wanted you to know that they're scrambling to find alternatives. Thank you for letting me know. For what it's worth, Carol said, I think you did the right thing. I've seen too many people get taken advantage of in situations like this. The caterer called the next day with similar news. Without my guarantee, they required full payment upfront. Jenna and Brad hadn't paid. They'd lost that booking too. I heard through Simone that Jenna and Brad were frantically trying to find replacement vendors. Everything available in their price range was either booked or significantly lower quality than what they'd originally planned. They ended up moving the wedding to Brad's parents' backyard, cutting the guest list from 200 to 60, and hiring Brad's cousin who does photography as a hobby. The dream wedding, the barn, the mountains, the string lights, the 200 guests, was gone. And I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. 3 weeks after my withdrawal letters, I got a Venmo request. From Jenna. For $8,200. The note said, "For damages caused by your withdrawal from our wedding contracts. You cost us our venue and caterer." I stared at it for a long time. Then I screenshotted it. I didn't respond to the Venmo request. Instead, I posted the screenshot to a private Facebook group we were both in, about 20 mutual friends from college. I didn't write an essay. Didn't explain. Just posted it with one line. "Can anyone explain what damages I caused by withdrawing from contracts I signed?" The group went silent for about an hour. Then people started commenting. "Wait, Maya loaned you money for the wedding? You told me she pulled out because she was jealous of your happiness. This doesn't make sense. Why would she owe you damages? Jenna, did you pay Maya back the loan?" Jenna deleted her comments, left the group, and blocked me on everything within 15 minutes. But the damage was done. People were talking. Asking questions. Several people who'd said yes to the wedding suddenly had conflicts and couldn't attend. The wedding happened on a Saturday in late November. I didn't go. I heard later it was nice but intimate. Under 60 people. Brad's sister filmed it on her phone. The weather was cold and they had to move everything into the garage when it started raining. I spent that day at a pottery class, learning how to throw bowls on a wheel. My hands were covered in clay and my mind was completely empty of everything except the feeling of the wet earth spinning under my palms. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a Venmo notification. $8,200 from Patricia Keating. The note, "For my son's poor judgment. I'm sorry you were put in this position." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to send it back. To prove this was never about the money. But it was about the money. At least partially. And I'd learned something important about myself over the past few months. I don't have to perform selflessness to be a good person. I accepted the transfer. Deposited it. Started rebuilding my emergency fund. And then I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I booked a trip to Portugal. 2 weeks. Solo. A small apartment in Lisbon with blue tile walls and windows that opened onto a street where people sang at night. I left 3 days after New Year's. Portugal was exactly what I needed. I walked for hours without checking my phone. I drank coffee that tasted bright and alive instead of bitter and burnt. I sat in small cafes and watched people live their lives, arguing, laughing, kissing, existing, and I remembered that the world is so much bigger than one friendship, one betrayal, one wedding. On my last night in Lisbon, I sat on my apartment's tiny balcony and looked at my wrist. The tattoo was still there. 40.7128 degrees north, 74.0060 degrees west. The coordinates from the night Jenna and I met. Those coordinates are still real. That night still happened. 14 years of friendship still existed. But I'm not standing in that spot anymore. Neither is she. And that's okay. When I got back home, I threw myself into work. My freelance business had been steady but not thriving. I'd always been too afraid to charge what I was worth, too worried about losing clients if I asked for more. But something had shifted in me. I started saying no to projects that didn't pay well. I raised my rates. I stopped over-delivering and undercharging. And the strangest thing happened, I got more work. Better work. Clients who respected my time and paid my invoices without arguing. Turns out when you act like your work has value, people believe you. Derek tried to reach out once, about 2 months after we broke up. He texted from a new number I didn't recognize. "Hey. I've been thinking about everything. I think we should talk." I looked at the message for about 10 seconds. Then I blocked the number. We didn't have anything to talk about. He'd shown me who he was, someone who chose comfort over truth, who protected the wrong person, who called my self-protection dramatics. I didn't need an apology or an explanation. I just needed him to stay gone. By March, my bank balance had climbed back up. $14,600. Higher than it had been before I loaned Jenna the money. I'd saved the $8,200 Patricia returned, plus another $6,400 from 3 months of better paying projects and actually keeping my earnings instead of lending them away. I was proud of that number. I'd built it the right way this time. Slowly. With boundaries. I still thought about Jenna sometimes. Wondered if she ever felt guilty. If she told herself a story where she was still the victim. If she'd convinced herself I'd overreacted. Probably. People do that. Rewrite history until they're the heroes of every story. But I'd stopped needing her to acknowledge what she'd done. I knew. That was enough. One Tuesday afternoon, I was at the grocery store, reaching for avocados, when I heard a familiar voice. Maya? I turned. Andrea. Jenna's mother. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. Andrea, I said. We stood there for a moment, both of us holding produce we hadn't actually examined. How are you? She asked, and she sounded like she actually wanted to know. I'm good, I said. And I meant it. I heard you went to Portugal. That sounds lovely. It was. Silence. She put down her avocado, picked up another one. I'm sorry for how everything happened, she said quietly. I don't think Jenna handled it well. But she's my daughter, so You don't have to explain, I said. I understand. And I did. Not in a way that made it okay, but in a way that made it human. Andrea was protecting her child. Even when her child was wrong. That's what parents do. For what it's worth, Andrea said, I told her she should have been honest with you from the beginning. About the bridal party. About the money. All of it. Thank you for saying that. I don't know if it helps. It does, actually. We stood there for another moment, two people in a grocery store, holding the weight of everything that had happened. Then Andrea said, Take care of yourself, Maya. You too. She walked away. I bought my groceries. Drove home. And I felt something I hadn't expected, closure. Not the kind where everything gets resolved and everyone apologizes. Just the small, quiet kind where you realize you can carry this and still move forward. I saw Jenna once more, but not in person. I was scrolling Instagram one night, I'd reinstalled it for work purposes, and her profile appeared in my suggested follows. I clicked on it before I could stop myself. Her feed was perfect. Beautiful photos of her and Brad. Their apartment. Brunch spreads. Anniversary posts about their perfect day and beautiful beginning. No mention of backyard ceremonies or rain or reduced guest lists. Just the carefully curated version. The story she wanted to tell. And I realized, I don't need her to tell the truth publicly. I don't need vindication from strangers on the internet. I know what happened. The people who matter know what happened. That's enough. I closed her profile without liking or following. Then I deleted Instagram from my phone again. The work kept coming. In April, I got an inquiry from someone whose last name made my stomach drop, Morrison. I opened the email cautiously. Hi Maya, my name is Claire Morrison. I'm Jenna's younger sister. I don't know if you remember me, we met a few times when Jenna and I were still close. I know what happened with the wedding. I know my sister's version and I know that's probably not the whole truth. I'm not reaching out to defend her or explain or ask you to forgive anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You were always kind to me, and you didn't deserve what happened. Also, I'm getting married in the spring, and I need someone to design my invitations. I'd understand if you don't want to work with anyone named Morrison ever again. But if you're open to it, I'd love to hire you. My budget is $2,000 and I promise to pay half upfront. No family discount expected. Just business. Let me know. Claire. I read it 3 times. Felt that old familiar panic rising. The urge to decline, protect myself, avoid anything that connects back to Jenna. But then I thought about my bank account. About Portugal. About the fact that I'd spent months learning to separate people from their last names, actions from associations. Claire wasn't Jenna. She was her own person. And she was offering me work, not asking for a favor. So I wrote back. Hi Claire, I remember you. Thank you for reaching out and for your honesty. I'd be happy to work with you on your invitations. My rate is actually $2,500 for full custom design, but I can work within your $2,000 budget by adjusting the package. Let's set up a call this week to discuss your vision. Looking forward to it. Maya, professional. Boundary? Fair. I hit send before I could second guess myself. The work with Claire was easy. She was communicative, kind, paid her invoices on time. When I sent her the first round of designs, she responded with thoughtful feedback and ended the email with, "Take whatever time you need with revisions. No rush." It felt almost suspicious at first. Like there had to be a catch. There wasn't. She was just a decent person who respected professional boundaries. During one of our video calls, she mentioned casually, "I haven't talked to Jenna much since the wedding. Things got complicated." I think she felt like everyone was taking sides, and I told her I wasn't going to pretend I didn't know what happened with you. She didn't like that. I didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. But it was good to know that I wasn't the only one who saw the problem. In May, I started therapy. My new friend Rachel, I'd met her at a design conference, suggested it after I mentioned having trouble sleeping. "You check your bank account like 5 times a day," she'd said gently. "And you flinch every time someone asks you for a favor. That's not nothing." So I found Dr. Kim. She's in her 50s, has an office that smells like lavender, and doesn't let me get away with anything. In our third session, I told her about the voicemails. How I still had them saved across multiple cloud accounts. "Why do you still have them?" she asked. "Evidence," I said. In case anyone tries to say In case anyone tries to say you what? I sat with that. In case anyone tries to say I overreacted. And if they do say that? Then I can prove I didn't. Can you, though? Dr. Kim leaned forward. Will a voicemail from Brad change the mind of someone who's already decided you're the villain? I opened my mouth. Closed it. "Maybe the voicemails aren't for other people," she said gently. "Maybe they're for you. Maybe you're still trying to convince yourself you had the right to protect yourself." I cried for the first time in months. Not dramatically. Just quiet tears that felt like something loosening in my chest. "I was so scared of being wrong," I said. "Of ruining everything over nothing." "But you didn't ruin anything," Dr. Kim said. "You withdrew from a contract. That's not arson. That's paperwork." It sounds obvious when she says it like that. But in the moment, it felt like the end of the world. That's what I'm learning to unlearn. The idea that protecting myself is a betrayal of other people. That boundaries are aggression. That naming a problem is worse than enduring it silently. It's slow work. Some days I still catch myself apologizing for things that aren't my fault. Over-explaining. Offering solutions to problems that aren't mine to solve. But some days I don't. Some days I just exist without performing constant agreeability. Those are good days. Last week, I had dinner with Rachel and her partner Sophie. We made pasta and drank wine and talked about normal things: Sophie's terrible boss, Rachel's mother's new boyfriend who wears too much cologne, a documentary about cults that we all want to watch together. At the end of the night, Rachel said, "I'm really glad we're friends." And I said, "Me too." No dramatic declaration. No trauma bonding. Just simple, steady friendship that doesn't require me to set myself on fire to keep anyone warm. It feels revolutionary. This morning, I woke up before my alarm. Made coffee, the good stuff from the Portuguese cafe that ships internationally. Opened my laptop. The screen glowed that familiar blue-white. I checked my bank account first thing, like I always do now. $14,600. Still there. Still safe. Then I checked my email. 3 new project inquiries. One from a corporate client, good money. One from a small nonprofit, interesting work. One from a bride in Seattle who found my portfolio online and loved my clean, modern aesthetic. I responded to all 3. Set my rates without apologizing for them. Scheduled consultations for next week. Then I closed my laptop and looked out my window at the morning light hitting the building across the street. The tattoo on my wrist is still there. I glance at it sometimes, 40.7128 degrees north, 74.0060 degrees west, and I think about that night on the roof. About Jenna making up constellations. About being 20 years old and thinking friendship meant forever. Those coordinates are still real. That moment still happened. 14 years still existed. But I'm not standing in that spot anymore. Neither is she. We've both moved to different coordinates entirely. And that's okay. That's allowed. Friendships can end without anyone being evil. People can grow apart. Love can be real and still not be enough. I don't hate Jenna. I don't wish her harm. I just don't wish her anything, really. She's become like a character in a book I read once, vivid at the time, vague now, no longer someone I think about unless something specific reminds me. That feels like its own kind of ending. Not dramatic. Not satisfying. Just complete. The voicemails are still in my cloud storage. All 3 accounts. I checked last night. Maybe I'll delete them someday. Maybe I'll keep them forever. But either way, I don't need them anymore. I already know the truth. And the truth is simple: I did nothing wrong. I loaned money to someone I loved. When that person betrayed my trust, I withdrew my support. That's not nuclear. That's not spite. That's just a person deciding she matters as much as everyone else. It took me 32 years to learn that lesson. Cost me $8,200, a best friend, a boyfriend, and several months of sleep. But I learned it. And now, sitting here with my Portuguese coffee and my growing bank account and my calendar full of people who respect my boundaries, I can honestly say, it was worth every penny. Some people spend $8,200 on a lesson. I spend it on proof. Proof that I can trust myself. Proof that I can survive betrayal. Proof that protecting myself doesn't make me a villain, it just makes me someone who's learned what she's worth. The laptop screen glows blue-white in front of me, the same color it was that night 6 months ago when I transferred the money. Same light, same screen, completely different person looking at it. I take a sip of my coffee. It tastes like brightness instead of bitterness. And I get back to work.
Story 4.
My mother texted me on Christmas Eve, "Everyone's staying home, sweetie. Don't risk losing your life in the snowstorm." The next morning, I woke up to my social media exploding with photos of my sister and my fiancé announcing their engagement at my parents' house, the same house where the cancelled Christmas dinner had apparently taken place with everyone but me. I simply commented, "Congratulations." 3 days later, my phone exploded with 179 missed calls, 53 texts, and a message from my mother reading, "You've gone too far. I need to tell you something, and I need you to believe me, because I still can't believe it myself sometimes." On Christmas morning, I woke up to discover my entire family had lied to me. My fiancé had been sleeping with my sister for 6 months, and my mother had orchestrated the whole thing to steal my inheritance. And the worst part? They were angry at me for finding out. Let me back up. My name is Emma. I'm 28, a pediatric nurse at a Chicago hospital, and until Christmas Eve of last year, I thought I had a pretty normal life. Exhausting, sure, double shifts, back-to-back patients, the kind of tired that lives in your bones, but normal. Good, even. I was engaged to Ryan, this charming pharmaceutical sales rep with dimples that could disarm a nun. We'd been together 4 years. He proposed at a botanical garden in the spring, got down on one knee under the cherry blossoms like something out of a movie. My family lived 3 hours away in Millbrook, the kind of small town where everyone knows your business and pretends they don't. My mother, Linda, was what people generously called protective and what I privately called controlling. My father, David, ran a struggling hardware store and had perfected the art of avoiding conflict by simply not being present, even when he was in the room. And then there was Natalie, my 25-year-old sister, a social media influencer with 47,000 followers who still lived at home and documented every latte like it was a religious experience. I was the responsible one. The daughter who moved away, built a career, sent money home when Dad's store nearly went under. Natalie was the baby, the one who got photographed instead of employed, whose failures were always reframed as her finding herself. I didn't resent it, exactly. That's just how it was. I loved Ryan partly because he was the first person who chose me first, who made me feel like I wasn't just the backup generator keeping everyone else's lights on. Looking back, I can see the cracks. But when you're living inside something, you don't notice the walls closing in until you can't breathe. Ryan had been visiting Millbrook more often in the past 6 months. Pharmaceutical conferences, he said, at a hotel near my parents' town. It made sense. His territory covered half the state. When I mentioned it seemed like a lot of conferences, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Welcome to Q4, babe. Everyone's pushing for year-end numbers." Natalie had gotten weird about my engagement ring, too. Asked me detailed questions about the cut, the clarity, where Ryan proposed, what I was wearing. I thought she was planning for her own future, trying to manifest her dream wedding or whatever influencer thing she was into that week. I even showed her photos, pointed out the vintage lace dress I'd been eyeing for the actual wedding. My mother's phone calls had shifted, too. She'd ask about my work schedule with unusual precision, what days I was on, what time I got home, whether I was picking up overtime. Then she'd change the subject quickly, like she'd caught herself doing something wrong. I felt it. That low-grade unease that lives under your sternum, that tells you something's off but you can't name it. But I was busy. I'm always busy. And when you're busy, it's easy to tell yourself you're being paranoid. The plan was simple. I'd spend Christmas Eve with Ryan's family in the suburbs, then we'd drive to Millbrook Christmas morning for dinner with mine. I'd already bought gifts, wrapped them in the paper Natalie liked with the gold foil edges. I'd requested the day off 3 months in advance. Then, December 23rd at 7 p.m., my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Sweetie, we're canceling Christmas this year. The storm forecast is awful, they're predicting whiteout conditions. Everyone's staying home. Don't risk your life on the roads. We'll celebrate when it's safe." I stared at the message, disappointment settling in my chest like wet sand. But I understood. The news had been talking about the storm for days, showing those terrifying graphics of purple and red zones sweeping across the Midwest. I texted back to the family group chat, "Stay safe, everyone. We'll do New Year's instead, heart emoji." No one responded. Ryan found me on the couch, staring at my phone. "What's wrong?" "Christmas is cancelled. The storm." He sat beside me, pulled me against his chest. His cologne smelled different, sharper. "Hey, that's okay. We'll have a cozy Christmas for two. I'll make you that French toast you like." Something about his eagerness felt wrong. Like he'd been waiting for this. But I pushed the thought away, told myself I was being paranoid, ungrateful. He was trying to make me feel better. Christmas morning, I woke up at 6:30 to the sound of my phone vibrating. Still half asleep, I reached for it, expecting a Merry Christmas text from a friend or a work emergency. 47 Instagram notifications. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I opened the app with shaking hands. The first photo was Natalie in a wedding dress. Not just any dress. My dress. The vintage lace one with a sweetheart neckline and the pearl buttons I'd shown her last spring, the one I'd bookmarked on 6 different websites. She was holding a bouquet of white roses and smiling at the camera with that practiced influencer smile, the one that never quite reaches the eyes. I scrolled. The second photo made my vision tunnel. Ryan in a tuxedo, down on one knee in my parents' living room. The living room that was supposed to be empty because Christmas was cancelled. Natalie's hand covering her mouth in surprise, a diamond ring catching the light. My mother in the background, hands clasped together in joy. Third photo, the whole family in formal wear, champagne glasses raised. Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, my cousins, my grandmother in her good pearls. The dining room table set for 30 people, decorated with candles and evergreen garlands and those gold chargers my mother only used for special occasions. The caption made my hands go numb. He said yes, ring emoji, when you know, you know. So grateful Mom and Dad could host our surprise engagement party on the most magical night of the year. #Christmas engagement, #future husbands, #family is everything. 23 photos total. I scrolled through them like someone watching a car accident in slow motion. My father hugging Ryan, both of them laughing. My mother cutting an engagement cake, tears on her cheeks. Natalie and Ryan kissing under mistletoe. Extended family I hadn't seen in months, all dressed up, all celebrating. The Christmas that was too dangerous to attend. The storm that never came. I walked to the window. Outside, light flurries. Barely an inch of snow on the ground. The kind of pretty, harmless snow you see on greeting cards. My chest felt hollow. Not angry yet, not sad. Just empty, like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell standing. With fingers that didn't feel attached to my body, I navigated back to Natalie's post and typed a single word in the comments, "Congratulations." Then I turned off my phone and stared at the wall for 6 hours. Ryan came home that evening acting completely normal. Asked about my day, ordered Chinese food from the place I liked, kissed my forehead while we watched a movie I couldn't follow. I sat beside him on the couch and felt like an anthropologist observing an alien species. He hadn't checked his phone once. Not once. Later, while he was in the shower, I looked. Every social media app was deleted. Text history wiped clean except for messages from that morning. He'd scrubbed it. He knew I'd see. He'd prepared. I checked my own phone. 179 missed calls. 53 texts. I didn't read any of them. Instead, I took screenshots. Natalie's post, every single photo, the notification count, the timestamp. I emailed them to myself with a subject line, evidence. At work the next day, I functioned on autopilot. Checked vitals, administered medications, smiled at worried parents, helped crying babies. My attending physician, Dr. Sarah Ochoa, cornered me by the supply closet. "You're scaring me, Emma." You look like you're planning something. I smiled. It felt like my face was cracking. Just tired. That's not tired. That's dissociation. She touched my arm gently. What happened? Nothing I can't handle. But I wasn't handling it. I was filing it away, pressing it flat, storing it in a locked drawer in my mind where I wouldn't have to look at it yet. Because if I looked at it, if I really let myself feel the magnitude of what had happened, I would shatter into pieces too small to put back together. December 28th. 10:15 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. You've gone too far. I stared at the message for a full minute. 4 words. No context. No explanation. I typed back, too far? I said congratulations. The response came immediately. Your silence is cruel. Your sister is devastated. Ryan is heartbroken. You're being incredibly selfish. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. A sound came out of my throat that might have been a laugh or might have been something else entirely. They were angry at me? They had lied, betrayed, orchestrated this elaborate deception, and they were angry at me for being upset about it? I called her. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. How could you comment that and then disappear? Do you have any idea what you've put this family through? Her voice was shrill, accusatory. You lied about Christmas. My voice came out eerily calm, flat. We did not lie. We pivoted. The storm predictions changed, and Natalie needed us. She and Ryan have been planning this for months. Months. A pause. The air between us went sharp. They didn't want to hurt you, Emma. But you've been so distant. Always working. Ryan felt neglected. Natalie was there for him. Love doesn't follow rules. The thing is, I'd expected anger. Defensiveness. Justification, even. But the casual way she said it, like she was explaining why she changed her hair color, that broke something fundamental in my understanding of reality. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't even a betrayal that came with guilt. This was planned. Intentional. And in her mind, I was the problem for not accepting it gracefully. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I became a detective. Not an emotional one, a clinical one. I logged into the cloud account Ryan and I shared, the one we'd set up for wedding planning. The password was still the same, our anniversary date. Inside, there was a folder titled MLK Photos. Our code for Millbrook. I clicked it. Hundreds of photos. 6 months of documentation. Ryan and Natalie at dinner, both laughing at some private joke. At the lake near my parents' house, Natalie in a sundress, Ryan's arm around her waist. In her childhood bedroom, the one with the pink walls and the posters from high school. Screenshots of their text conversations, I can't wait to marry you. She'll understand eventually. Your mom is helping with a guest list. My mother knew. Helped plan it. Was the architect of the whole thing. I downloaded everything to an encrypted drive. Organized it by date. Made notes in a spreadsheet. At work, I smiled at patients. At home, I slept beside Ryan and felt nothing but cold calculation. I was building a case. I kept digging. Found mail he'd been redirecting to his office, credit card statements showing jewelry purchases, venue deposits for a spring wedding. A joint checking account I'd never seen before, opened in September, Ryan Mitchell and Natalie Hartley. $18,000 deposited. It took me 3 days to trace it, but I found the source. My father had sold his truck. The vintage Ford he'd restored over 15 years. He'd sold it and given the money to Ryan and Natalie. My father had funded this. The days between Christmas and New Year's blurred together. I moved through them like a ghost, present but not really there. Ryan kept asking if I was okay, if I wanted to talk about the family drama. That's what he called it. Drama. Like it was a petty argument over where to spend Thanksgiving, not the systematic dismantling of my entire reality. I'm fine, I told him every time. Just processing. He seemed relieved by that answer. Like I was behaving exactly as expected. At night, while he slept, I'd lie awake and catalog the lies. Every I love you he'd said while planning a future with my sister. Every kiss goodnight before he drove to Millbrook for a conference. Every time he'd held me and told me I was overthinking things, that I was paranoid, that I needed to trust him more. The gaslighting had been so thorough, so consistent, that I'd started to doubt my own perception of reality months ago. Now I understood why. Then I found something that made my blood go cold. Ryan's old iPad, the one he'd replaced last year, was still logged into our shared iCloud account. He'd forgotten about it. It was in the hall closet, stuffed behind winter coats. I charged it, waited, opened the voice memo app. There, dated October 14th, a recording. My mother's voice: Ryan, sweetie, you have to be patient. Emma's suspicious. She asked why you're in Millbrook so much. We'll tell her about the conference. Natalie's ready whenever you are, but we need Emma's inheritance money first. David's opening the trust in January for her birthday. Once that's in your joint account, you can leave. Natalie deserves security. Emma's made her choices. She chose her career over family. She'll land on her feet. I played it 3 times. Sat on the bathroom floor with my hand over my mouth to keep from making sound. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't even just betrayal. This was a financial conspiracy. They were waiting for my grandmother's trust fund, $340,000, accessible when I turned 29, to be deposited into the joint account Ryan and I had opened last year for wedding planning. Then they'd take the money and disappear. My birthday was January 15th. They planned this. Months of planning. Ryan sleeping in my bed, kissing me goodnight, learning my work schedule so he could visit my sister. My mother coordinating, scheduling, lying. Natalie trying on my dream dress, practicing her surprised face for the engagement photos. All of them waiting, watching, counting down to the day they could take everything and leave me with nothing. I sat there on the cold bathroom tile until my legs went numb. Then I stood up, washed my face, and started planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Dr. Ochoa sounded concerned when I told her I needed a mental health day, but she approved it without question. Take care of yourself, Emma. Whatever's happening, it's not worth your well-being. I spent the day making phone calls. First, I contacted my grandmother's attorney, Margaret Morrison. She'd handled my grandmother's estate when she passed 3 years ago, and she knew the terms of the trust intimately. Ms. Morrison, I need to discuss the trust fund. I'd like to request early release. There was a pause. That's unusual, but not impossible. The trust specifies release at age 29 unless there are extenuating circumstances. May I ask why? Security concerns. Financial fraud risk. I can provide documentation. Her voice sharpened. Come to my office this afternoon. Bring everything. 2 hours later, I sat across from her in a downtown office with a view of the Chicago River. I showed her everything. The forged signature on the joint account Ryan had opened without my knowledge. The voice memo transcription. The timeline of deception. The photos documenting the affair. The financial records showing the skimmed money. She sat back in her chair, face pale. This is criminal. You could press charges. I intend to. But first, I need that trust fund secured in a new account. Only my name. No one else can access it. She made 3 phone calls right there in front of me. By the time I left her office, the trust fund was being transferred to a new account at a different bank, one Ryan had never heard of. It would clear in 72 hours. Emma, she said as I was leaving, your grandmother would be proud of you. She always said you had steel in your spine. I managed to smile. I'm about to test that theory. Next, I contacted a forensic accountant my hospital used for billing disputes. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she had a reputation for being thorough and absolutely relentless. I paid her $200 for 3 hours of work. I need you to trace every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer from my paychecks for the past year. She worked fast. Within 2 days, she had a complete picture. Ryan had been skimming $400 a month, moving it to the joint account with Natalie. $5,000 total. Not enough for me to notice month to month, especially with my irregular overtime pay, but enough to build their nest egg. He was careful, Patricia said, showing me the spreadsheet. Always different amounts, always timed with your overtime deposits so the total looked consistent. This is sophisticated financial abuse. I filed a police report for identity theft and financial fraud. The officer taking my statement, a tired-looking detective named Morrison, looked at the evidence and whistled blow. This is bad. Federal charges territory. You have everything documented? Everything. Good. Because in cases like this, it's all about the paper trail. Most victims don't realize what's happening until it's too late. You got out ahead of it. Then I turned my attention to Natalie. I spent an entire evening going through her Instagram, cataloging every sponsored post from the past year. She'd been sloppy. Posted ads for products she clearly didn't use, skincare routines that contradicted each other, fitness programs she never followed, diet supplements while posting photos of junk food. She claimed partnerships that didn't exist, used affiliate codes without proper disclosures, and inflated her engagement numbers with bot accounts. All of it violated FTC regulations. All of it violated her sponsor contracts. I compiled screenshots, created a detailed timeline, and sent professional, formal emails to every brand she'd worked with. I didn't editorialize. I didn't explain our relationship. I simply presented the evidence and let them draw their own conclusions. Within 48 hours, I started getting automated responses. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take these matters seriously and will investigate immediately. But I told no one what I was doing. Ryan thought I was withdrawing into depression, exactly as my mother had predicted I would. He even mentioned it to me one night, voice dripping with false concern. Babe, maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. This is a lot to process. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Had I ever really known this person? Or had I just loved the performance? Maybe you're right, I said. I'll look into it. He seemed satisfied with that. New Year's Eve arrived. Ryan wanted to go to a party his coworker was throwing, but I told him I wasn't up for it. He went alone, kissed me on the forehead before he left, told me he'd be home by midnight. I knew he wouldn't. I knew he'd drive to Millbrook, spend the night with Natalie, ring in the new year with my family while I sat alone in our apartment. I didn't care. I had work to do. At 11 p.m., I texted my mother, I'm sorry for going silent. Can we talk? I want to understand. She called within 30 seconds. Her relief was palpable, almost embarrassing. Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. You've always been the mature one. You've always understood that family is complicated. I'm just confused. Can we all sit down? Maybe January 10th? I want to hear everyone's side. Of course, darling. Family meeting. We'll work this out. You'll see, Natalie and Ryan are perfect together. Once you accept it, we can all move forward. We can all be happy again. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She genuinely believed I would just accept this. That I would swallow my pain, my humiliation, my grief, and smile for the family photos. Because that's what I'd always done. That's what good, responsible Emma did. I hung up and immediately started preparing for the meeting. January 10th arrived cold and clear. I woke up early, got dressed in clothes that made me feel professional and powerful, black slacks, a crisp white blouse, the blazer I wore to important meetings. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked harder than I felt. Older. But steady. I drove to Millbrook with a large manila envelope on the passenger seat. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. The whole family was there when I walked in. Parents, Natalie, Ryan, even Aunt Carol, who'd apparently helped cater the engagement party. They were all sitting in the living room like an intervention, faces arranged in expressions of concern and sympathy. Like I was the sick one. Like I was the problem that needed to be managed. The room smelled like my mother's perfume, white diamonds, the same one she'd worn my entire childhood. The scent used to mean safety. Now it made my stomach turn. My mother stood, arms outstretched, that practiced smile on her face. Emma, sweetheart, we're so glad you came. We've been so worried about you. I wanted to apologize in person, I said. The relief on her face was almost painful to watch. Natalie started crying immediately, those practiced influencer tears that usually got her out of trouble. Ryan stood up, took a step toward me. Emma, I'm so glad you're ready to talk about this. We never meant to hurt you. I opened the envelope and began placing papers on the coffee table. One by one. Like dealing cards. Printouts of text messages between Ryan and Natalie, going back 6 months. The photos from the cloud account, printed in full color, them at dinner, at the lake, in her bedroom. Financial records showing the joint account with a forged signature, my signature that I never signed. Bank statements proving the skimmed money, highlighted in yellow. The voice memo transcription with my mother's words, we needed Emma's inheritance money first. The silence in the room was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I kept laying down papers. Every lie. Every deception. Every stolen dollar. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, precise. I also wanted to give you these, I said, my voice eerily calm. My lawyer says they'll be useful during the fraud investigation. Ryan's face drained of color. He sat back down heavily, like his legs wouldn't hold him. Natalie's crying intensified, but now it sounded real, panicked. My mother stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish. You recorded us? That's illegal. Illinois is a single-party consent state. Perfectly legal. Also, the trust fund cleared yesterday. Into my name only. New account. New bank. Your signatures on the joint account Ryan opened? Forged. That's a federal crime. I let that sink in. Watched Ryan's hands start to tremble. Watched my mother's face cycle through shock, denial, anger, fear. My father hadn't spoken. He was staring at the papers on the table, his face gray and drawn. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. I looked at him for the first time. Really looked at him. Did you know? He closed his eyes. Took a shaky breath. Not until Christmas Eve. I thought it would blow over. I thought you'd forgive us eventually. You always forgive us. Did you know about the money? His silence was the answer. Something inside me, the last piece of hope I'd been carrying, shattered. My father, the one I thought was just passive, just conflict avoidant, just trying to keep the peace, he'd known. He'd let it happen. He'd sold his truck to fund it. You sold your truck, I said. The one you restored. 15 years of work. You sold it and gave them the money. Natalie needed help. She was struggling. Ryan promised to take care of her, with my money. He flinched. You were always so independent. So capable. We thought you'd be fine. There it was. The core of it. I was supposed to be fine. I was supposed to be strong enough to handle being betrayed, robbed, humiliated. Because that's what I'd always been. The strong one. The one who didn't need anything from anyone. I turned to leave. Ryan grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. Wait, Emma, please, we can explain. I looked at his hand on my arm. Then at his face. My voice came out cold, empty. You're going to want to let go. He did. His hand dropped like I'd burned him. At the door, I turned back one last time. I wanted to remember this. Wanted to remember their faces, the fear in their eyes, the consequences finally catching up with them. Natalie, your sponsors are dropping you tomorrow. I sent them everything. Turns out they don't like fraud. Ryan, the police will contact you about the forged signatures. There's also the matter of the $5,000 you stole from my paychecks. Mom, I've frozen the joint account with Dad's truck money. It'll be returned to him, not you. And everyone here? You're uninvited from my life. I walked out into the January cold, got in my car, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw my mother standing in the doorway, mouth open in shock, one hand pressed to her chest like she was having a heart attack. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt nothing but a clean, sharp sense of completion. Halfway home, I had to pull over. Not because I was crying, but because my hands started shaking so badly I couldn't hold the steering wheel. The adrenaline was wearing off, and underneath it was something bigger, darker, more complicated than simple relief. I sat in my car on the side of the highway and called Dr. Ochoa. Emma? Are you okay? I just confronted my family about everything. I need you to know, I might not be okay for a while. But I'm safe. I'm handling it. Do you need me to come get you? The kindness in her voice almost broke me. No. I just needed to tell someone. I needed someone to know what I did. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. That took incredible courage. After I hung up, I sat there for another 20 minutes, watching cars pass on the highway. Then I drove home. The fallout was nuclear. Ryan was arrested 2 days later. I was at work when it happened, but Detective Morrison called to tell me. We picked him up at his office. Made quite a scene. His boss wasn't happy. The charges, identity theft, financial fraud, forgery, were serious enough that his pharmaceutical sales license was suspended pending investigation. Eventually, he pled down to restitution and probation, but his career was over. You can't sell drugs with a fraud conviction on your record. He tried to call me from jail. 17 times. I blocked the number after the first voicemail. Emma, please, you have to understand. I love Natalie. I really love her. But the money, that was your mom's idea. She said you'd never notice, that you made enough, that the trust fund was just sitting there. Please. I never meant for it to go this far. The thing about betrayal is that the explanations never make it better. They only make it worse. Because now I knew he was willing to throw everyone else under the bus to save himself. Natalie's Instagram collapsed like a house of cards. She lost 38,000 followers in a week. The comments on her posts turned vicious. People dug up the Christmas engagement photos, the ones she'd posted so proudly, and they connected the dots. My one-word comment, "Congratulations," became infamous. She knew, someone commented. The sister knew the whole time and just said congratulations. That's cold. I didn't correct them. Let them think what they wanted. The engagement photos went viral on Reddit. Woman steals sister's fiancé at fake Christmas dinner trended on multiple subreddits. People analyzed every photo, every caption, every smile. They found the lies, the timeline, the evidence. They did the work I'd already done, but publicly, brutally. Natalie tried to do damage control. Posted a tearful video apology, the kind influencers do when they're caught doing something terrible. I made mistakes. I was young and confused. But the harassment I'm receiving is taking a serious toll on my mental health. The comments were merciless. You harassed your own sister by sleeping with her fiancé. Her sponsors cut ties within 48 hours. The morality clauses in her contracts were clear. By February, she was working retail at the mall, the same mall where she used to do sponsored posts about luxury skincare. I heard about it from my cousin Michelle, who reached out apologetically. I'm so sorry, Emma. We had no idea. Mom told us you were okay with it, that you and Ryan had broken up months ago. We should have known something was wrong. My mother tried to salvage control. Posted a long Facebook essay about misunderstandings and family healing and how social media had distorted the truth. She made herself the victim, claimed I'd overreacted, that I was being vindictive and cruel. The comments section filled with people who knew exactly what had happened. Extended family members who'd been at the Christmas engagement party and realized, belatedly, what they participated in. Linda, you lied to Emma about the storm. We all know what happened. Stop trying to rewrite history. She deleted the post within 24 hours. In March, my father filed for separation. He called me from the hardware store one evening, his voice quiet and defeated. Background noise of the store, the bell above the door, customers asking questions, the sound of keys being copied. I should have protected you. I was a coward. Your mother, she convinced me you were strong enough to handle it. She said you'd chosen your career over family, so we had to choose Natalie. But that's not why she did it. His voice cracked. She just loved Natalie more. I see that now. And I let her make me complicit. I was sitting in my apartment, looking out at the city lights. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know. I see it. What I did. What I didn't do. All the times I should have stood up for you and didn't. You deserved better. You deserved a father who protected you. It was the first honest thing he'd ever said to me. Maybe the last. I appreciate you saying that, I told him. But it doesn't fix anything. I know. I needed you to know I see it. The divorce proceedings were ugly. My mother fought him on everything, the house, the business, even the furniture. She couldn't understand why he was leaving, why he was choosing now, after 33 years of marriage, to suddenly grow a spine. I didn't attend any of the hearings. Didn't get involved. It wasn't my circus anymore. I didn't return to Millbrook after that confrontation. Didn't drive past the town limits, didn't take the highway exit. I sold the engagement ring, Ryan's name was on the receipt, so legally it was mine, and used the money for the deposit on a new apartment in Chicago's Andersonville neighborhood. One bedroom with big windows that faced east, catching the morning light. A kitchen with actual counter space. A bathroom with a tub deep enough to sink into. The first space that was entirely mine, chosen by me, paid for by me. I blocked everyone's numbers except my father's, and even his I mostly let go to voicemail. I changed my social media privacy settings, locked down everything, made myself invisible to anyone not on my approved list. The trust fund sat in my account, untouched. I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. $340,000 that people had been willing to destroy me to obtain. Blood money, tainted by what they'd been willing to do. But slowly, carefully, I started to rebuild. One evening in March, I was cleaning out my old storage unit, the one I'd rented when I first moved to Chicago. Most of it was junk, college textbooks, old clothes, kitchen items I'd replaced. But at the bottom of one box, I found childhood photos. Birthday parties where I'm 7, 8, 9 years old, always standing slightly apart from the group. School plays where I have the supporting role, never the lead. Family vacations to Lake Michigan where Natalie is front and center in every photo, and I'm visible in the background, holding towels or bags. At the very bottom, underneath everything, was a birthday card. I opened it, and my mother's handwriting stared back at me. Looping, careful, practiced. To my special girl. You're going to do such big things, and Natalie will need you to show her how. Happy 7th birthday. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. 7 years old. I was 7 years old, and already I wasn't a daughter. I was infrastructure. Scaffolding for my sister's life. A supporting character in someone else's story. I sat on the concrete floor of the storage unit, surrounded by boxes of a childhood I barely recognized, and cried for the first time since Christmas. Not because I was sad. Because I was finally angry. Angry at my mother for making me a tool instead of a child. Angry at my father for letting it happen, for choosing passivity over protection. Angry at Natalie for accepting it, for taking and taking without question, without gratitude, without ever once wondering if it was fair. Angry at Ryan for seeing that dynamic and deciding to exploit it. But mostly angry at myself for believing it was love. I sat there until the storage facility's automatic lights shut off, plunging me into darkness. Then I packed up the boxes, donated most of it to charity, and kept only that one birthday card. Not as a memento. As evidence. A reminder of what I refused to become. 6 months later, in August, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted to charge nurse. The interview process had been intense, 3 rounds, a presentation to the department head, questions about leadership philosophy and conflict resolution. I'd walked in prepared, armed with data about patient outcomes and staff retention rates. I'd walked out with a job. The extra responsibility was demanding, but I liked having my competence recognized on my own merits, not as a family obligation. My colleagues respected me. My decisions mattered. When I suggested protocol changes, people listened. I'd also started dating someone new. His name was Marcus, and I'd met him at a community book club that Dr. Ochoa had convinced me to join. You need to do something that has nothing to do with medicine, she'd said. Something just for you. Marcus was a librarian. Gentle, soft-spoken, wore cardigans with elbow patches like he'd stepped out of a different era. He had warm brown eyes and hands that were always gentle when they touched my arm, my shoulder, the small of my back. He'd asked me out after a particularly heated discussion about unreliable narrators in literature, and I'd said yes before I could overthink it. He had absolutely no idea about the Christmas that wasn't. I liked it that way. Some stories don't need to be told on a first date. Or a 5th. Or maybe ever. What do you do for fun? He'd asked on our 3rd date, over coffee at a place near the library. I read. I run sometimes. I'm learning to cook actual meals instead of just reheating things. What about family? Do you see them often? No, I said simply. We're not close. He didn't push. Didn't ask follow-up questions. Just nodded and said, I get that. Family's complicated. And that was enough. That was everything. A letter arrived one afternoon in August, forwarded from my old address. My father's handwriting on the envelope, but the return address was Natalie's. I stood at my mailbox, staring at it. Part of me wanted to throw it away immediately. Another part, the part that was still learning to trust my own instincts, wanted to know what she had to say. I took it upstairs, set it on my kitchen counter, and stared at it for 2 hours before I opened it. Inside, 3 pages, handwritten on lined notebook paper. The handwriting was messier than I remembered, less controlled. The first 2 pages were what I expected. Performative apology, victim language. I was young, I was confused, Ryan manipulated me, I didn't understand what I was doing. The words of someone who'd been in therapy long enough to learn the script but not long enough to mean it. But the 3rd page shifted. The handwriting got messier, words crossed out and rewritten, ink smudges like she'd been crying while she wrote. Mom told me you'd never forgive us, so it didn't matter what we did. She said you were already lost to us. She said you chose your career over family, so we could choose each other over you. I believed her because I wanted to. Because it was easier than admitting I was jealous of you my whole life. You were the daughter who succeeded. I was the daughter who needed rescuing. And I hated you for it. Hated that you were smart and independent and didn't need anyone's approval. Hated that you left and built something real while I stayed home and performed happiness for strangers on the internet. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know, I see it now. What she did to both of us. How she made me the weapon and you the target. How she pitted us against each other from the beginning, made me think your success was my failure. Made you think my needs diminished yours. I'm in therapy. Twice a week. It doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying to understand why I became this person. Why I thought stealing your life was easier than building my own. Ryan and I broke up. Turns out he wasn't in love with me, he was in love with what I represented. The easier sister. The one who wouldn't ask questions. The one who came with a trust fund attached. When the money disappeared and the charges got filed, he disappeared too. Funny how that works. I got a job. Real job, not influencer stuff. I'm working at a bookstore now. It's quiet. I like it. No one knows who I am or what I did. I'm just Natalie, the girl who restocks shelves and recommends mysteries to old ladies. I'm sorry I stole your Christmas. But I think I stole mine too. I think I stole my whole life, actually. Traded it for likes and comments and mom's approval. And now I'm 30 pounds heavier because I actually eat food instead of photographing it, and I have 3 real friends instead of 47,000 fake ones, and I'm happier than I've ever been. Which is messed up, right? That it took losing everything to figure out I never had anything real to begin with. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry. Natalie. I read the letter 3 times. Set it on my kitchen counter. Stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond. Didn't pick up the phone or write back. The truth was, I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there was anything to say. Natalie's apology was real, I thought. But it was also too late. You can't unring a bell. You can't unsee someone's true face once the mask comes off. But I didn't throw it away either. I put it in a drawer, filed it away like evidence. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond. Maybe not. The important thing was that I got to choose. I got to decide what I did with my anger, my grief, my eventual forgiveness or lack thereof. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for managing everyone else's emotions. I was only responsible for my own. Later that night, I stood at my apartment window, the big one that overlooked the street, the one that got morning light and made the whole place feel open and alive. Marcus had been here earlier, had made dinner while I worked a long shift. He'd left a note on the counter, leftovers in the fridge. Text me when you get home safe. Simple. Uncomplicated. Kind. I thought about inheritance. About what we pass down, whether we mean to or not. My grandmother left me money. A nest egg, security, the means to start over. But she'd also left me something else, a spine. She'd been the one who told me I could be anything, do anything. Who'd never made me feel like my accomplishments diminished someone else's light. My mother left me trauma. The knowledge that love could be transactional, conditional, weaponized. That family could be the most dangerous place to trust. My sister left me betrayal. The scar tissue of knowing that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. But I was leaving myself something else, the refusal to carry forward what was never mine to begin with. I didn't have to inherit their patterns. Their sickness. Their need to make love conditional and transactional. I could choose differently. I made myself tea, chamomile, the kind that actually helps you sleep. Sat by the window. Watched the city lights. For the first time in 8 months, I didn't check over my shoulder to see who was watching. Didn't analyze the motives behind a kind gesture. Didn't wonder what someone wanted from me when they offered help. Marcus liked me because I was good at my job and laughed at his terrible puns and didn't mind that he talked too much about obscure poets. Not because I was useful. Not because I could provide something he needed. Dr. Ochoa had promoted me because I was competent and calm under pressure. Not because she expected me to fix everyone else's problems. My colleagues asked for my input because I'd earned their respect. Not because I'd sacrificed myself to prove my worth. Outside, snow began to fall. Real snow this time, gentle and soft, the kind that makes the city quiet. The first snow of the season, unexpected and lovely. I thought about my mother's text from Christmas Eve. The storm is coming. Don't risk your life. They told me the storm was coming to keep me away. But the storm was already inside. Had been inside for years, building pressure behind walls I couldn't see, fed by lies and manipulation and the slow erosion of my sense of self. The Christmas that hadn't destroyed my family. It had just finally shown me what was already true, that love, in that house, had always been a performance. A transaction. A carefully maintained illusion where I played the role of supporter, enabler, eternal understander of everyone else's needs. And I was done performing. The snow fell heavier now, coating the street below in white. I watched a couple walk by, bundled in coats, laughing at something. A dog bounded through the snow, tail wagging. Life continuing, indifferent to my small drama, my personal apocalypse. I closed the curtains and went to bed. In the morning, there would be work. Patients who needed me, not because I was obligated to fix them, but because I'd chosen a profession where care was the point. Marcus would text me something sweet and slightly awkward. Dr. Ochoa would probably corner me about the new protocol I'd suggested, eager to implement it. A life that was mine and mine alone. No one else's blueprint. No one else's expectations. Just me, figuring out what comes next. September brought cooler weather and a strange kind of peace. I'd been sleeping better. Eating actual meals. Running along the lakefront in the mornings before work, watching the sun come up over the water. My father called occasionally. Brief conversations, mostly about mundane things, the hardware store, the weather, customers he'd known for 30 years. We didn't talk about the divorce or my mother or what had happened. We talked around the edges of things, tiptoeing through a relationship we were trying to rebuild from rubble. "I'm thinking of retiring," he said one evening in late September. "Selling the store. Maybe moving somewhere quieter." "Where would you go?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere I've never been. Somewhere that doesn't have memories attached to every corner." I understood that. "That sounds healthy, actually." "Would you?" He paused. Took a breath. "Would you want to visit? Wherever I end up?" "Not often, I know we're not there yet, but maybe sometimes." I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Maybe. Someday. Let's see how it goes." "That's fair," he said. "That's more than fair." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. But it was the possibility of it. The door cracked open, not wide, but enough to let in a little light. In October, Dr. Ochoa pulled me aside after a particularly brutal shift. We'd lost a patient, a 6-year-old with complications from leukemia. The kind of loss that sits heavy in your chest for days. "You did everything right," she said. "You know that, right? Sometimes we do everything right and it's still not enough." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I'm proud of who you've become," she said quietly. "Not just as a nurse. As a person. You went through something that would have broken most people, and you came out stronger. That's remarkable." "I don't feel strong," I admitted. "I feel like I'm still figuring out how to be a person who doesn't expect betrayal around every corner." "That's what strength looks like," she said. "Not the absence of fear or damage. The willingness to keep going anyway." November arrived with early snow. The kind that doesn't stick, just dusts everything in temporary white. I was walking home from the grocery store, bags in hand, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Emma? It's Michelle. Your cousin." "Hi, Michelle." I shifted the grocery bags, tucked the phone against my shoulder. "I know this is weird. I know we haven't talked since everything happened. But I wanted to tell you, a bunch of us are getting together for Thanksgiving. Just cousins. No parents, no drama. And we'd really like you to come." I stopped walking. Stood on the sidewalk while people flowed around me. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "I get it. I do. But Emma, we miss you. We grew up with you. You're family to us, and what your mom and Natalie and Ryan did, that doesn't change how we feel about you. If anything, it made us realize we should have been paying more attention. Should have reached out more." My eyes stung. I blinked hard. "I'll think about it." "That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. No pressure either way." After we hung up, I stood there for a long moment, grocery bags getting heavy, the cold seeping through my jacket. Family. The word felt complicated now. Loaded with meaning and history and pain. But maybe family could be redefined. Not the people who shared my DNA, but the people who showed up when it mattered. Who chose me, actively, deliberately. Who didn't require me to diminish myself to fit their narrative. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. I didn't go to Thanksgiving with my cousins. Not that year. It felt too soon, too much. But I texted Michelle and told her I appreciated the invitation. That maybe next year I'd be ready. Instead, I spent Thanksgiving with Marcus and his family. His parents were warm and welcoming, asked about my work without prying into my personal life. His sister made terrible jokes and his nephew showed me his entire Pokémon card collection. It was normal. Boringly, beautifully normal. "You okay?" Marcus asked later, as we drove back to my apartment. "Yeah," I said. And I meant it. I really am. By December, a full year since everything imploded, I felt like a different person. Not healed, exactly. But healing. Learning to trust myself again. Learning that not every kindness came with strings attached. The anniversary of Christmas that wasn't came and went. I worked a double shift, came home exhausted, and realized I'd barely thought about it. The day had just been another day. The wound had scarred over, still tender if you pressed on it, but no longer bleeding. That night, I pulled out Natalie's letter. Read it again with fresh eyes. Then I sat down and wrote a response. Not because I owed her anything, but because I owed myself closure. Natalie, I got your letter. I've read it several times over the past few months. I appreciate your honesty, and I believe you're genuinely trying to change. But I need you to understand something. I'm not ready to forgive you. I might never be ready. What you did, what all of you did, changed me fundamentally. Made me question every relationship, every kindness, every declaration of love. That's not something therapy fixes quickly. I'm glad you're working a real job. I'm glad you're figuring out who you are without the performance. I hope you find real happiness, the kind that doesn't come at someone else's expense. But I'm not going to be part of your healing journey. You'll have to do that work on your own, without my forgiveness as a prize at the end. I'm building a new life. One where I choose who gets access to me, who earns my trust, who deserves my energy. You're not on that list. Maybe you never will be. I don't hate you. But I don't love you either. And that's okay. We don't have to be anything to each other. Take care of yourself. Emma. I sealed it, addressed it, mailed it the next morning. Felt lighter for having said what I needed to say. January 15th arrived. My 29th birthday. The day the trust fund was supposed to transfer into the joint account. The day they'd planned to take everything and disappear. Instead, I woke up in my own apartment, in my own bed, with money safely in my own account. Marcus had left a card on my kitchen counter, something funny about getting older and still not having life figured out. Dr. Ochoa texted me birthday wishes and a reminder to take the day off for once. I spent the day exactly how I wanted. Brunch at a new restaurant. A long walk along the frozen lakefront. A bookstore where I bought 3 novels I'd been meaning to read. Dinner with Marcus at a quiet Italian place where the waiter brought me tiramisu with a single candle. Make a wish, Marcus said, smiling across the table. I closed my eyes. Thought about what I wanted. Not what I'd lost, but what I was building. I wish for continued healing. For the strength to keep choosing myself. For the wisdom to know the difference between forgiveness and allowing harm. I blew out the candle. What did you wish for? Marcus asked. Can't tell you. Won't come true. He laughed. That's not how that works. Isn't it? I thought that was the rule. The rule is arbitrary. You can tell me if you want. I thought about it. Then smiled. I wish to keep becoming someone I'm proud of. Someone who doesn't carry other people's damage as her own. Someone who chooses joy deliberately, even when it's hard. He reached across the table, took my hand. I think you're already there. Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. But I was closer than I'd been a year ago. And that was enough. Late that night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out that childhood birthday card one last time. Read my mother's words about being scaffolding for Natalie's life. Then I tore it up. Slowly, deliberately. Into pieces too small to put back together. I stood over the trash can and let the pieces fall like snow. Some inheritances you choose. Some you refuse. And some you transform into something new entirely. I was done being scaffolding. Done being infrastructure. Done being the strong one who had to handle everything because everyone else was too fragile. I was just Emma now. Complicated, flawed, still figuring things out. But mine. Finally, completely mine. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the absence of pain. Not the erasure of what had happened. But the quiet knowledge that I had survived it. That I had chosen myself when it mattered most. That I had refused to let their sickness become my inheritance. I closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow would come. Work and patience and Marcus and the slow, steady work of building a life worth living. But tonight, I rested. The storm had passed. The sun would rise. And I would be there to meet it. That was enough. That was everything.